Okay, is this on? Is my microphone on? Is the microphone, there it goes. Okay, we are ready to begin. We have a new system, so bear with us tonight if there's a little bit of hiccups. There's a new process of having the introduction, so I was sitting here waiting for that. We're going to do the best we can. We have only a couple of voting items tonight, so it should go well, but I apologize if we have some hiccups. We're going to begin tonight's council meeting with the invocation by Stephen Collins from Inland Vineyard Church, followed by our Pledge of Allegiance led by Dominic Thorpe.
Let's pray. Father, I thank you for your presence. And Lord, we know that you love the people of Corona. And you set people in authority over us. And Father, you said to pray for those in authority over us. Father, we lift up the mayor and the city council, that you would give them wisdom and direction over your people that you made them for, that you created them for, to being our leaders. And Father, we thank you for the fire department and the police department that risk their lives every day for our safety, for our people, your people, Father, that they go into harm's way. They stand in between us and evil. So I ask you, Lord, that you would protect them and put your shield around them. And Father, we thank you for the treasurer and the planning commission. Father, we know that we have plans, but you direct our path, that you would give them wisdom and direction for your city, for your people. And Father, we thank you for the city council and the clerks, that Father, this wouldn't be here unless it was for the secretaries and the paperwork and the things that need to be done to make this council meeting today. We thank you for the people that were surrounded you, and your gospel 2,000 years later is still going. So we just give you praise and thank you, Father, for this city. In Jesus' name, amen.
Put your right heart over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As I said, we have a new system. We're going to get the kinks out of it tonight. Well, thank you, Dominic, for leading us in the pledge.
You're welcome.
How old are you?
9 years old.
In what school?
I go to Susan B. Anthony.
Grade.
I am in third grade.
What kind of things do you like to do when you're not in school?
Play with my Legos and just hang out.
Hang out. Doesn't change much until you get really older. So we have a certificate that we like to give you so that you have some memory of tonight's meeting, but you can go and look at this online too, so you'll be able to watch yourself. It's kind of fun sometimes. So we're going to give you this, and I think you've got somebody who wants to get some pictures, so why don't you turn around? Thank you very much. Tonight, we do have several presentations. This agenda is a revised one because we added 2 presentations to the agenda. So that's item B and D. We have the beginning one, which will be a presentation from Chad Willardson, our city treasurer. He's going to give us an investment update.
Thank you, Mayor Spiegel, and City Council, and City Management, staff, and citizens for allowing me just to give a brief update. In the past week alone, I've been asked by some of the taxpayers and citizens of Corona if a couple different things. If I can help bring a corner bakery to Corona, if I can fix the congestion on Ontario Street and the 15 freeway, and if I can do something about the, the parking area on Skyline. So the first slide I've added is actually what the city treasurer does, just for some clarification. So a lot of you probably already know this, but real quickly I want to share just what my job is as the elected city treasurer. A lot of this stuff can be found on the city website. But the mission of the city treasurer in Corona is to enhance the economic status of the city while protecting its assets and maximizing the efficiency of the management of city's funds through prudent investment. So just a couple of these. I know that's a lot of bullet points on this slide, but my job as the city treasurer is to manage the city's investment portfolio, monitor investment activity, review the investment strategy, look for ways to improve the financial results of the portfolio, manage the city's relationship with investment advisors, brokers, and custodial banks, review and make recommendations if we want to change the city's investment policy or make amendments, monitor and research changes in legislation which govern the management of the public investments, review investment portfolio for conformance to the government code and our investment policy in Corona, review daily cash management and investment reports to maximize the use of the city's idle cash, provide monthly investment reports to the city manager and city council. And I think you kind of get a feel for what my job is, but finally at the end, invest within the stated portfolio objectives of safety, liquidity, and yield. So that is my job as a city treasurer. I would love to fix all the issues in the city, but I know there are people working on that, so I will stick to my job. Notable changes since I've been elected in November of 2016. Here are just a few of the calendar items of things that we've done since that election. So first order of business for me was to complete an investment analysis of Corona's investment holdings with my team at Pacific Capital. In March and April, reviewed the portfolio, did a historical cash and portfolio segmentation analysis with Chandler Asset Management and city staff members, Carrie and Patricia and the team, to see how we could increase the annual income earnings for the city. In May, one of the changes I recommended was to increase the communication process to discuss how we could more efficiently manage our cash flow. I felt like there were ways that we could increase the income of what we essentially are taking in and revenues and invest it a little bit more quickly and prudently to earn more income for the city. In May and October, 2 separate transfers made to the investment portfolio from the cash reserves, totaling $30 million. So essentially we took some money that I considered to be more idle than it needed to be and moved it into the higher income investments. For 2017, just for the year, comparing it to the previous year, we were able to increase the interest income for the year to by $542,739 to a total of $3.273 million, which was a 20% increase over the previous year. So those are some of the changes we made. The statistics for the city portfolio, and before I get into this, Councilmember Haley asked me to summarize a little bit about the investment options and choices that we are limited to as a city investment portfolio. So we are not able to take great risk with the portfolio. We don't invest in stocks. We don't invest in real estate. In fact, it's a very confined space of bond and income producing investments. So the strong stock market recovery over the last 12 to 15 months does not have correlation with what our city portfolio does. So the stock market is very different from the bond market. They are not correlated in a way that we could say, hey, the stock market did well, therefore Corona's account's going to do well. I wish that was the case. It's not the case. So we are restricted in what we can invest in, but within those parameters, we do have a lot of flexibility, and that's one of the reasons that I felt like we could improve what we were doing, and that's why I ran to help the city in this position. So the summary of November 2016 portfolio is there up on the slide. Portfolio value of about $204.5 million. At that point in time, the investments we were buying averaged about 1.46% per year in income, and the total portfolio averaged 1.17 for the income yield. We had a cash fund account balance of $29 million that was earning about 0.67% per year. January 31st, 2018, so that's the most recent month end, portfolio value of $234 million, 14.4% increase. Our new purchases, investments we're investing in now, average 1.77% per year, 21% increase from previous numbers, and the total portfolio is yielding 2.3%, which is almost a double, 97% increase. Cash fund balance, and this changes day to day, month to month based on expenses, but as of January 31st, it was $64 million, and the income rate had doubled since November of 2016. So all in all, I do believe that we've made a positive difference, and we've changed the communication, increased that. We've changed the philosophy in the process. We've invested for better yield without taking on more risk. And because these processes are in place now, I believe that we'll continue to increase and improve the income for the city account. We have not made material changes or any formal changes to the investment policy, and that's something that I'll continue to monitor year by year. But we've worked within the policy to change the approach and the philosophy. So that's my report. Thank you.
Does have any questions for Mr. Willerton? I see nobody in the queue.
Actually, I do.
Sorry, Chad.
Thank you.
Sir.
Having been in your position, I've got the utmost respect for everything that you've done. I've seen your name printed, and you've got a number of initials after your name. What are they, and what do they stand for, please?
Two main designations: accredited wealth management advisor and chartered retirement planning counselor. So in my day job, we manage investments and handle the financial life for private clients. So a lot of it does correlate. That's why I felt this was a good fit to help improve the portfolio from a professional's perspective.
Well, you've certainly proven that. And one of the things that we had discussed earlier today is you, if nothing else, you are an elected official. And so that you do have to run again in a couple of years. So I wish you well, because I'm very, very pleased with the work that you've done. And like I asked you to explain the positions in which you can invest money. What's the most aggressive product that you can put money into?
In the city account,
Yeah.
corporate bonds. So corporate bonds are allowed up to a 5-year maturity. So that's something we monitor very regularly to see when it would be a good opportunity to us to allocate a little bit more.
Right.
Because we do have room right now. We're not up to our maximum range in that category. But as in the last few months, the spreads have kind of tightened a little bit, and it just doesn't seem like an attractive time to buy. But that's something that I'm monitoring to see when we can add a little bit there.
Very, very good. Well, again, I can't say anything but thank you for your professionalism, your wisdom, and the great job that you're doing so far.
Thank you.
Chad Hanglus, we have Wes speak that has a comment. I don't know if he's got a question.
All right.
West Speak 2623 Toomey Lane. Yeah, Chad, stay close, so I'm going to grill you here. No, my grilling is basically how happy I am as a resident of the city, and as somebody who supported Chad, and I'm just, like I said, can't be happy enough, or can't say enough how happy I am to see how well that we performed, and thanks for Chad for doing such a great job and presenting exactly how well we've done and why we've done it. And like, again, very happy that he's here. Thanks.
Seeing no other comments, thank you very much, Chad. You've done a terrific job. Thank you. Okay, we move on to our second presentation, which is the finance update by Assistant City Manager, Administrative Services Director, Carrie Eden.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Give us just one moment as we get the presentation up here. Okay, so we're going to start tonight by going over our fiscal year 2018-19 budget kickoff. So the budget preparation is underway. There are some key dates here, and one that I like to point out here is on May 23rd, we do have our budget workshop scheduled. These dates are kind of the milestones that we will be hitting as we complete our budget for next fiscal year. With this upcoming budget process, we have received direction that we're to be reducing our budget by 7% citywide in the general fund. And to break that down a little bit more, I'd like to go over that. So with our current adopted budget, the general fund's total operating budget is $143,920,139. So we took 7% of that number, and then looking at the various departments and the percentage that they make up of that amount, we applied that percentage across that 7% reduction, which is going to equal $10,074,410. With the recent imposed terms on the non-sworn employees, there was a reduction in personnel budget, and that credit has been given to those departments, reducing that $10 million by $1.177 million, leaving $8,897,229 that we're looking to reduce next year's budget by. These targets have been given to all of the directors, and we're going to be working closely with them as we do prepare next year's budget and meeting those targets and meeting the goal of reducing the operating expense by 7%. Just an overview of the general fund expenditures, 70% of that budget is in personnel cost. 2.9% of it is in debt service, 0.7% is in CIP, and the remaining is in service and supplies. So a majority of that budget is going to be in personnel, and we're going to have to be very creative in finding ways to hit that target and reducing next year's budget. Here's another overview of what the general fund expenditures are by department. you can see that public safety makes up about 50% of our entire budget, with police being at $47.9 million, fire at $27.4 million, and the remaining departments making up the rest. So with public safety making up a majority of the budget, and they will have a majority of that reduction, as I have mentioned in previous presentations with you at various meetings, this next year we're going to be faced with a lot of difficult decisions. And next I'd like to go into exactly why we're having to make these difficult decisions. CalPERS. This is a slide on our unfunded CalPERS liability. June 30, 16's valuation report is the most current one that we have. That number that is circled in red is what the total unfunded liability is. We have a liability of $253,522,994. On this slide, I have listed the 3 last valuation reports that we have received from CalPERS, and starting in 14, they listed that our unfunded liability was $192 million. Then it increased to $215 million. This year, it's $253 million. I fully anticipate when we receive this year's actuarial, it's going to continue to increase. This is a pension obligation that the city has, and we have to take it very seriously because it is growing to an unsustainable level. And we have to be proactive in finding ways how we're going to be managing those annual contribution rates and balancing out with the unfunded liabilities. So our goal here is to be able to come up with some surplus budget to be able to pay down the unfunded liability. In a few slides, we're going to get into what our forecast looks like. And as you know, in the out years, we do have a structural deficit in our budget. We can't simply budget for putting more money into that unfunded liability when you have a budget that's a deficit. You need surplus cash for that. That's one of the main reasons why we're having to reduce our budget, is to be able to come up with the money to start putting that towards the pension obligations that we have. This next slide is looking at our annual contribution rate. So currently on the left-hand side, the left box in red, that's $23.8 million. That's what our annual contribution amount is for this fiscal year. It's $23.8 million. Looking back 4 years, it was $17.7 million. With our most recent actuarial report, it's growing to be $40.3 million. So in addition to trying to manage our unfunded liability, our annual contribution amount is growing at a very large amount. And again, we don't have the revenues anticipated to come in and offset that, so we're having to reduce our operating expense to be able to come up with the money to make the annual payments. Here's a snapshot of what that financial forecast looks like when you have a comparison of the revenue and expenditures side by side. The amount in the center with the red box around it, that does represent the current year. And we do show that with the updated information that we had at year end, giving you a kind of a mid-year update, we adjusted that to be our expenses are $144 million and revenues are $143 million. So we do have a deficit of $1 million into this next, or for this current fiscal year. And then as we look out in the future years, the green bar represents the expenses, the blue bar represents the revenue, and you see that that gap between the revenue and expense continues to grow. So this is what I'm talking about when it's the structural deficit. This does have the most current information from the actuarial reports that we've received from CalPERS. And with every update that we receive, we revise these numbers with any new information we have. I do anticipate that that's going to have some impact, where that gap between the two amounts, being the revenue and expense, is going to be growing. So how do we shore up these budget deficits? Well, we have our 2 reserves that we can utilize. One is the budget balancing measure reserve, and the other is the emergency contingency reserve. The city has a policy for our emergency contingency reserve of 90 days worth of operating expense. The first reserve that we're going to be able to draw down from to balance the budget is that budget balancing measure reserve. Currently, at fiscal year end, we had $28.9 million in that reserve, with $30 million sitting in the emergency contingency reserve. In December, we did a year-end update, and we received direction with the increase in fund balance of $8.3 million, what to do with that money. So instead of it going to the budget balancing reserve, We allocated $2.6 million of it to go into the emergency contingency reserve to meet the 90-day policy, and the remainder went into another reserve, the city equipment of $1.5 million, and the remainder, $4.2 million, going towards pension obligations. So each year, as we proceed in providing you the budget, and when there is a structural deficit, we're going to be reducing the budget balancing measure reserve by whatever that shortfall is. So looking at this graph, come fiscal year 2021, we will be depleting the budget balancing reserve. From there, we will start drawing down on the emergency contingency reserve. At this point, looking out 5 years, in fiscal year 22-23, we will have depleted the emergency contingency reserve to have a balance of $13.8 million. This next slide is taking the August 2016 actuarial report and comparing it to the July 17 report. So we lined up the columns by fiscal year and did a year-over-year review to see what the difference is, so I could demonstrate to you as we receive these new actuarial reports, they do change by quite a bit, not only in the current year, but future years. So if with these 2 years being compared, that bottom line is the difference. So in a 5-year period, in just 1 year, they increased what the amount is going to be in our contribution by $13.3 million. This is a look at our major revenue categories and personnel expenditures. It's taking a 5-year look back and a 5-year look ahead, and kind of looking at what that trend line is. So for property and sales tax, those being our major revenue sources for the general fund, we can see that that trend line is pretty steady going upwards. The green bar is our sales tax, and you'll see in 1920 there's a slight dip. With our forecast, we are anticipating a slight slowing in the economy, and we've projected that into our forecast. The next line is PERS, and the two bottom ones is health insurance and workers' comp. So the top two and the bottom two have a pretty steady trend line that seem to parallel together and seems okay, but that middle one is our PERS. You can see this increase that is just not going to be manageable, and we need to start taking steps today to be able to manage the deficit and just the overall increase in our PERS contribution amount. This is a look at the CalPERS actuarial valuation report for the city's miscellaneous plan. This is for all of the non-sworn employees. And what this is telling us is that for every dollar in payroll, the city is having to pay an additional 42 cents in PERS contribution. And then for next year, it's going to be growing to 48 cents. I'd also like to point out that for fiscal year 17-18, the projected annual payroll is $27.5 million. In this valuation report, the following year, they're saying it's going to be reduced to $26 million. But then you look at that unfunded liability contribution amount, it's going from $8.9 million to $9.9 million. So you try and look at what makes sense. Well, our payroll dollars are dropping, but that unfunded liability contribution is increasing. These are all the changes that CalPERS is making that is creating the unfunded liability, a serious issue for our city, as well as many other cities. So there was a recent article in the California Policy Center last month, and it talked to that point with how much more will cities and counties pay CalPERS. This is a very serious issue for all cities that are in the state of California. One of the quotes or comments here was, when stocks and real estate have been running up in value for 8 years, pension plans should not be underfunded, but they are. They were way too optimistic, and the consequences are just beginning to be felt. In this article, it also provided some data on how much more each city will be paying in the contribution amount. And I took a look at all of this and compared Corona to some of the other cities. I believe there was just over 420 cities that were listed in this report. Corona ranked number 38 with the amount in contribution. So here again, we're paying $23.8 million this current fiscal year, and it's growing to 40.8%. That's a 71% increase. But you'll see we are not alone. There are other cities that are having even a greater increase. So we don't hear much about some of our surrounding agencies and the crisis that they are facing with their PERS, but we are. We're talking about it. We're wanting to be transparent. We're letting you know we are going to have a serious budget issue, and it's going to be very challenging to be able to meet the personnel and PERS obligation in the coming years with our current revenue. So why is Corona's contribution amount so high? Well, Corona's an old city with many retirees. Corona has the most generous formula for its classic members. It's 2.7 at 55. Corona has one of the lowest fund ratios in the state. We know we need to make increases to our funded ratio, and it needs to be a priority. The city's or the statewide average is 68%, and Corona's at 60.1%. Again, our personnel expenses are 70% of our operating budget. So why does Corona's sky-high contribution rate mean as a practical matter? Corona's pension problem is much more worse than other agencies. Corona's cannot continue to offer the most generous employee benefit package in the state, and Corona cannot afford to be at the top or near the top in total compensation. Again, as I had mentioned in the previous slide, Corona ranked number 38 in contribution amount among 420 plus agencies. Another article that we recently read was in the OC Register, and it was How Broke Is Your California City? So this took a rubric of information that is found in our CAFR, and they took and applied it to various cities. And so I thought it'd be interesting to see, well, Corona wasn't listed in this article, but I was curious, what is Corona's fiscal health card? So here it is. Corona's assets is $1,451,676,763. We have capital assets of $1,090,262,588, and then restricted assets of just over $74 million. So that leaves us $287,349,745 for available to pay our bills. We have a total amount of bills of $536,658,366. So our money available to pay our bills, we are actually at a deficit. The number of households we have in Corona is 69,460. So if each taxpayer's share of this deficit would be 3,600. According to the Truth in Accounting's grading rubric, we have a grade C. Compared to Irvine, which is a B, we're not doing as good as Irvine, but our demographics quite aren't like Irvine. But then next to Riverside, well, we're doing a little bit better than they are. Last week, the League of California Cities published their findings on a study that they had conducted on retirement systems and sustainability. In their executive summary, they talked about rising pension cost over the next 7 years, and it's nearly doubling. They also stated that for many cities, pension costs will dramatically increase to unsustainable levels. The impacts of these increases is going to be unattainable, and general fund spending will affect cities even more than the state. Employee costs are going to be a larger portion of spending for cities. Rising pension costs are more pronounced for mature cities like Corona with large numbers of retirees. They also listed some items with what cities can do. They can develop and implement a plan to pay down the city's unfunded actuarial liability. And that's what we're talking about with our budget for next year. They also mentioned consider a local ballot measure to enhance revenues. They talked about creating a pension rate stabilization program. That's something that we're going to be coming back to in the near future to talk about a Trust 115 account to start putting money aside to address our pension obligations. Change service delivery methods and levels of certain public services. Use procedures and transparent bargaining to increase employees' pension contributions, and issue a pension obligation bond. But this is something that is strongly discouraged. It does not make sense for agencies to be issuing bonds on their pension obligations. Primary factors contributing to CalPERS funded status. There were 5 items that they listed, and I'd like to just go through these quickly. There's a lot of information there, but they talked about enhanced benefits, the investment losses, cost of living adjustments, CalPERS contribution policy, and demographics. The League of California Cities full report is on the city's website, listed under the Finance Division. And this was just a snapshot of what that report said, but I wanted to make you aware of it and also to let the public know about it, and they can read about it on our city's website. Another article came from Stanford professor Joe Nation. This was in the California County News back last fall. And he's quoted here saying, "This is absolutely the most challenging issue facing state and local government, not just in California, but across the country. No one is safe. No municipality should feel comfortable with retirement systems the way things are." Another article in the Press Enterprise, "State pension costs are crowding out basic services." That was their headline. In the highlight in this article, one of the comments was, "But there's an agreement on one fact. Rising pension costs are making it harder to provide services traditionally considered part of government's core mission." We know that that's going to become an issue for us as we go into next budget year. So one of the things with looking at the budget, looking at our fiscal health card, and then most recently we had a press release where we talked about economies booming. These different snapshots of what finance or what the finances are for the city, what it is on the budget, and then the economy, it can kind of be confusing. So with economic development, they're a different department in our city in comparison to the rest of the departments. We are here to provide a service to the public, internally to our own customers within City Hall, but economic development, they're our cheerleaders. They're our sales team. They're the ones that are going to be bringing business to Corona. They had a win. They're doing very well. We've seen that unemployment has decreased. We've seen an increase in business license. Occupancy level, it's at an all-time low. This is something that we should be celebrating. But unfortunately, sometimes the negativity that gets stirred up on good news, it's unfortunate because this is a win. This press release should have been something that we should have been celebrating, but because of all of this other financial information that we're providing, this became a sore subject. And that was unfortunate because our economic development team, they're doing a great job, and this press release spoke to that. So let's talk a little bit more about when our economy is doing so well, as this press release was saying. What does that really mean to the general fund's bottom line? So property tax. We know that for every dollar that's collected in property tax, 8 cents of it comes to the city of Corona. So that's going to take a lot of change, a lot of movement to really have a great impact on the city's general fund. Sales tax. For every $100 that is spent, $7.75 is collected. Of that, $1 comes to the city of Corona. So with the economy booming in Corona, with what economic development is doing, how much of that is really going to move what the general fund's bottom line is? I'm not saying that it's not going to improve. It is, and we're grateful for it. But we also know that it's not going to help us resolve our pension obligation issue. This is a look at our sales tax by major business group. In the far right corner is our business and construction category. It makes up 26% of our total sales tax. Business and industry is second at 21%. So when we talk about the economy and the economy doing well, it's great for Corona because the majority of our sales tax base is based on economy-driven drivers. Construction. When the economy is doing well, we know construction is going on. When the economy slows, or comes to a stop, this also comes to a stop. So our sales tax is very volatile and dependent on our economy. So what does all of this mean? Well, when markets go up or markets go down, does it really have an impact on what it does to our checking account? Just like your own personal checking account, when we know we've had a good day in the stock markets, do you have any more money in your checking account? Nope. Neither does the city of Corona in their general fund. We know that there's going to be fluctuations in sales tax revenue, and we have to be prepared. When the economy's doing well, we do too. And when the economy slows, the general fund gets hit hard. The general fund's overall revenue is gradually improving. Whether that continues is unknown. But what we do know is that CalPERS pension contributions are skyrocketing. The revenues are not enough to offset those costs. And the only solution to the CalPERS problem is to pay down the unfunded liability, which requires budget surpluses and not deficits. That concludes my presentation. Questions?
I'm waiting for my screen to come back. Does anybody have a comment they'd like, questions? I do have a couple of members of the audience, Mr. Joe Morgan, followed by Mr. Trevor Wash.
Hi, Joe Morgan, 2063 Ren. So I heard 3 or 4 times tonight that now we have to work on getting our pension obligations down. We have to start working on this now. You guys all know that many, many people have been saying that we're headed for a cliff for many, many years. You've said it, well, yeah, we've seen this coming for 10 years. Yeah, what did you do? You kept making the bare minimum payments. You kept padding the benefits. You knew it. Everybody knew it. As recent as a couple of years ago at these meetings, you were touting the financial acumen of the staff and how brilliant it was to pad the benefits because they weren't subject to CalPERS. And then you had to yank them back. So you give people pay for 15 years and then yank it back and say, well, we're not messing with your pay. You know, you knew this was coming and you knew this was a problem. You know, so, and you know, look, you know the saying about people lying with statistics. You could say, well, we're the 38th. Well, guess what? We're the 50-something biggest city. I would fully expect that we would be somewhere in the top 100 of all the cities in California. That's what happens when we're the 50-something largest city. So at 38, that's not really a surprise to anybody. You know, so we should be up there. We should be at least the 50th largest city in terms of CalPERS contributions, and especially if our obligation is large because you've been making minimum payments for so long. That's how it works. So you owe what you owe. You know, we're in deep doo-doo now because the place has been mismanaged. You know, you haven't been doing your job. You haven't been looking at this problem long term. You haven't been looking at where we're going. You haven't built a city that takes advantage of a booming economy. We're like filter feeder. We just sit on the bottom of the ocean, and whatever happens to go through our gills is what we get to eat. We don't go out and look. You know, I think you stole my line about the ED department being cheerleaders. That's basically what they are. We're not trying to develop any economic activity. We're just trying to retain what's here. We don't have a concerted effort to go out and build a city that's viable long term. You know, I mean, this enhanced moves. So, you know, and I'm sure we'll probably hear it more in the run up to raising the sales tax, is that same 8 cents of every dollar goes to every single city in California unless they put a parcel tax on. That same 1 cent per dollar goes to every city in California. You can't act like we've been especially put on by the state because we get the same 1 cent per dollar that everybody else does. Other cities live within their means. Some cities don't. We aspire, I guess, to be one that doesn't live within our means. And we aspire, apparently, to be a city that has to go out and raise additional taxes and count on more volatile sales taxes, you know, instead of building something that's viable long term. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't know if I had to be summoned first. Trevor Walsh, Corona Firefighters, 790 South Smith, or Fire Station number 3. Firefighters do acknowledge the PERS issues as shown by our contract, our willingness to contract, excuse me, start over, our willingness to make compromises in our contract. I do have a question for Ms. Eden. They have been very transparent as far as teaching us about PERS and some of the stuff we're learning. I'm hoping we can actually apply here. As we face reductions, as we've seen in that last presentation, and looking at potentially closing down fire stations, reducing police officers, I'd like to use real numbers, and maybe you do have an answer for this, Ms. Eden. PERS actuarials use predictions of an assumed 3% increased wages and employee costs. And as we use PERS's numbers for that, is there any way we can actually turn that into using actual numbers? In that presentation, I talked about us being to the near top of total compensation, when after these contracts, we're going to be at the near bottom. Again, we're trying to make this thing work, but we're hoping if we have to make actual cuts, if we can use actual numbers to accurately predict what we have to cut. I think that's all I got. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so we are actually looking at having some software that will allow us to perform our own actuarials, because we do know that the factors or assumptions that CalPERS use to put into their valuation report, the payroll dollars that they're using is 2 years old. They also use an assumption of 3% COLA. We also know that they have a discount rate that they haven't been obtaining in the past years. This year is a little bit different, but we know that the valuation report that we receive from them has inaccurate or not 100% accurate numbers. And we use that, though, as a budgeting and forecasting tool. It's the only thing that we have at this time. But as I mentioned, we are looking into purchasing some software that will allow us to have more accurate numbers on a going forward basis. With the reductions and looking at the forecast and the deficit, while it's true that we're using the valuation report, those numbers in that forecast, we also know that that forecast only includes the minimum payment. It's like your credit card. We're making the minimum payment on it, and we're not digging ourselves out of the hole. So while our forecast has the actuarial's annual contribution amount, we know we need to start paying more than that.
I'd like to piggyback on that as well. Trevor's conversation with us tonight is really appropriate and on point. The PERS numbers are deeply flawed. So the numbers that we're presenting in the actuarial are significantly understated, not overstated. So whatever the number is that we see and we think we have to save, based on their rate of return that is below their anticipated rate of return or their projected rate of return, and the fact that the data is 2 years old, it doesn't include last year's raises for police and fire, nor this year's raises for the rest of the working groups. So the number that you're seeing is actually understated, not overstated. So even if we cut to that target, you won't be there. The resident made a couple of good points that I think are worth discussing as well. Other cities are able to live within their budget. Let's be very clear about this. Corona has a single source of revenue in terms of our property and sales tax. Other cities, such as Riverside, our closest neighbor, has property tax, sales tax, a utility users tax, and an additional 1 cent sales tax. So they have 2 additional pieces of revenue that this city doesn't have, and a transfer tax. There's also Huntington Beach, very similar sized city. They also have some additional tax revenues, and they're struggling with the same thing. So to that end, I think it's important when we're comparing apples to apples and doing these sort of data analytics for you, that we sort of dig deeper and not jump to conclusion. Additionally, the concept that ED's not performing or that we're not a city that's sustainable. If you look at Corona's number generation in terms of sales tax per capita and property tax per capita, we actually outperform everyone around us. So I don't know by which measure the resident would want to sort of measure us by, but the ones that are typical in terms of how do you measure, are you generating enough revenue per capita or your house is the right price? Corona is a top performer. The problem is that 8 cents isn't significant enough to service debt, even though our housing prices are above median almost county-wide. In fact, we parallel Orange County. To give you a level of perspective, for every $1 billion, $1 billion with a B that we generate in sales or property tax, we get roughly $10 million. We would have to double sales tax, double. That's a significant amount of growth, especially when a car dealership will generate maybe $100 million, a Costco maybe $150 million. To double it to get to $1 billion's almost unattainable. To get to $2 billion or $3 billion, which we would need to do to generate the $30 million, that's a really, really tall mountain to climb for any economic development department or any community. To give you more perspective, if you look at the Arantine Hills project, you would think that's a lot of houses. We don't make money on the development of the houses, but when you bolt that together and look at what people will spend and pay in property taxes, we would need almost 4 of those projects to come close to helping bridge this gap. So what it's telling you is it's not that Corona is not sustainable or we've not built a sustainable city, it's that the system is so deeply flawed. And we've all been saying it for 10 years that we were worried about PERS pensions. What did we do? Well, we did everything we could in terms of we reduced staffing. We didn't put things on the pay line, we put things on the benefit line. And then we pull them back. Well, we trimmed them a little bit, but Carrie's preparing another presentation for us that's going to really kind of walk through and talk about what does that really look like. I mean, I'm one that believes a family that gets $18,000 a year in health benefits, that's a pretty rich benefit. I mean, that's a fair benefit. I don't know that there's a lot of families in Corona that get $18,000 a year for medical coverage or 28 days of paid leave. You know, I can go on and on. So Corona still wants to offer a competitive compensation and benefit package. But Trevor is 100% correct when he says Corona Fire has been at the table trying to help us. They have. Trevor's been negotiating hard, working for his guys, but at the same time, they've been exceptionally giving. And Trevor, more than any, has made the trip along with the CPOA to Sacramento a number of times to implore them to get their act together, beg them, to the point where both our Corona firefighters and our police officers are working and contemplating even getting on the board of PERS because their divestiture, their approach to divesting from top-performing stocks like alcohol and coals and fuels and a number of other things that they won't invest in has cost the funding double-digit billions. Okay, it's a significant impact to the taxpayer. So to that end, we need to work on it. We need to keep right-sizing our benefits package. We need to try to stay competitive in the pay range to retain and maintain the great workforce that we have. But Trevor's right. At the end of this, our firefighters will be toward the lower end of the scale and not the top. And to that end, we need to solve this problem so that we can get back to balancing everybody's compensation and making sure that we're good payers and still maintain a good, safe, clean working environment, and more importantly, that we can spend more than 30 cents per dollar. I mean, for every dollar you pay in taxes, only 30 cents comes back to you in the form of services, park maintenance, landscaping, painting, cleaning of the restrooms, I mean, all the things that we care about. So we have to start bridging that gap and reducing these expenses, and it's going to take new revenue, it's going to take cuts, it's going to take PERS doing their job, it's going to take our legislators hearing this message. So there's a lot of pieces that have to come together, but I guess my closing thought would be I think the resident made a number of comments that clearly demonstrate this is a very complicated topic and there's a level of ignorance on how we got here and what we're doing and some research that needs to be done because Corona's actually leading the way in this conversation. We've been contacted by Orange County cities. I was at the League of California Cities last week and people aren't understanding this problem yet. It's a huge problem, and as they are coming out of that coma, I think it's scaring them, and the inclination for a lot of folks is just to not deal with it. Let's kick the can down the street. Well, we don't think that's a good idea because the longer you wait, you can see the time value of money. When your unfunded liability is growing $20 and $30 million a year, it's a monster and it will eat you, right? So we have to trim the budget and use some of those monies to pay down unfunded liability because no matter what, we're going to have software and we're going to run actuarials that are more precise than PERS. In fact, PERS is talking to the same company about licensing the same software. But at the end of the day, whether our number is too high or their number is too low, it doesn't matter. It's like your credit card. They send you a bill and you have to pay the minimum payment. We have always paid the minimum payment. We've paid the minimum payment in advance and saved over $500,000 by doing that annually. So we've done all the right things. We're continuing to do the right things. But it's going to take a while because we have to knock that unfunded liability down faster than it's growing because it's a negative amortization loan right now. And the trajectory of that growth and how that translates into your minimum annual required payment is what is driving, our level of service down. So with that, if there's any questions, Carrie or I can answer them.
It looks like we have a couple of speakers. Mr. Perez, why don't you come on?
Good evening, Jason Perez, 1031 West 6th Street. I am the president of the Corona Police Officers Association. Mr. Talbert is absolutely correct. PERS is doing a horrible job return on investment of the money that we are investing. All the employees, including the Generals Association, have been up there trying to convince them otherwise. We are trying to put somebody on the board of the directors up there to change that. There's so many, I got 2 minutes and 51 seconds. So many questions I want to ask, but there's not enough time and I'm not prepared. But I will ask one question and that's it. You mentioned it, Carrie, that you were directed to make these cuts. So we got the boss, the big boss and the boss. Who directed you to make the 7% across the board cut? Please.
Let me interject here, because I was going to share this. I'm in the queue, that it was actually the council that made the decision to go with a 7% cut. As Mr. Talbert mentioned, we do need to reduce the budget, and so the council made that decision to set it at 7%.
Thank you. Well, since I have some time and hearing that, I will say it breaks my heart to see what the dais is doing to the city, to the citizens, to the level of service that it's getting, to the level of service it's going to be getting on July 1 after these cuts are being made. $3.5 million from the police department is harsh. We're going to be a reactive force. I will stop there.
So, Mr. De La Hoya, you don't want to speak now, you want to speak under public comment? Okay. Mr. Scott?
Yeah, first off, just to reiterate, it was the council that made the decision to make a 7% across the board budget cut for the coming year. We've been talking about a need to reduce our budget in order to sustain the city as long as we can. We have been talking about this for a year or more, so just to keep that path going. And we want to share that it's coming from us because it's important that employees know that as well as the community. To go to the item that Mr. Perez was talking about, reduction of services, I can remember back in, I believe it was July, after coming back from the League of California Cities meeting regarding PERS, it was discussed regarding a question that came up, does this mean that cities are going to be going bankrupt? And the response was, and I shared at that time, that the league believed that cities would be headed toward a limited bankruptcy is what they termed it. The example they gave was that if you had a library in your community, your library would be open maybe 1 day a week. If you had 5 fire stations, you would be reducing it probably as time went over to 1 or 2. Obviously, a reduction in your police force if you have a police force. If you're working through a contract, your contract would be scaled down as you work with sheriff. So that has been shared consistently. I've shared that as well as my colleagues. Can you get over to page 9? I don't know if we can get there. We're testing the system, I know. I'm sorry, it's page 23. I apologize. I'm having us go there because I find one thing very interesting, and I'm delighted that this article, Retirement System Sustainability Study and Findings, is being presented tonight. I found this last Friday and read through it, and I encourage everyone to read this document in its entirety. But on this particular page, if you go to the fourth bullet down under investment losses, CalPERS projects that the projected market rate assumptions will yield a 6.1% return for the fund over the next decade. Keep that 6.1% yield in your mind. Now, PERS was always projecting 7.5. That's what they were saying they were going to get. And they have not been getting that other than this last year. But I want to put that in the context of us. Think of PERS as your financial advisor. Your financial advisor saves money for you for retirement and so forth. So PERS is a financial advisor. The city of Corona is like you. They're the client. Now, in this scenario, the financial advisor, PERS, says, we're going to make 7.5% return. And us, the client, hopes they make it. Now, if they don't make it, we pay the difference. If they make more, they're happy, we don't pay anything. But if they don't make it, we pay it. Now, PERS hasn't been making it. So they're in the process of moving it down to 7. Again, if they don't make it as our financial advisor, then the city pays. But they're talking for the next 6 years, they're hoping to get 6.1, but their threshold is still 7. So for 10 years, the study says, they're not going to make it for 10 years. They're not going to make that 7, which means every community, every city, every county, every school district, everybody's going to be paying CalPERS. That's the way it goes. To get back to you, that's like your financial advisor, every one of you, if you have one, is generating money, hopefully, for you, so when you retire, you've got money there for retirement. You hope they're doing well. There's your financial advisor, Ted Ziegenboth. Here I am. He tells me, I'm going to make 7% for you, Jason. Going to make 7% this for you. Okay, I'm looking really happy about that. He comes back to me, he goes, well, we made 6.1. So, Jason, you get to pay the difference. But you're supposed to be helping me get to retirement. Well, it didn't work out this year. Sorry, you got to pay me. That's the same type of scenario we've got going here with CalPERS. It's not a good system, but I thought I would just try to make it so we can all kind of relate to it. Again, limited bankruptcy is what I heard last summer. And going back to Mr. Perez's comment, we don't want to go there, but there's a high probability of that. And that 7% cut in the budget is so we can have sustainability as long as we can. Thank you.
Mr. Wagner?
I just had a question for the record. I was kind of curious on what meeting you guys made the decision to reduce the staffing by 7% or to make that cut. What meeting, what date it was on, when it was voted on? How was that cut made?
That's a great question, Josh. So I have my annual review, and I came to council as part of that annual review in closed session and said, here's where I'm going, here's what I plan to work on for the coming year, here's what we accomplished for last year, and they agreed with my conclusion as to what the financials look like and where we were headed and how this 7% as part of the city's overall picture of what we're trying to accomplish probably needed to be done. So if you look back on, I believe, last Monday's agenda, you'll see city manager evaluation, and that's where I talked about my direction for the coming year.
Okay, so they never voted, though, specifically in a meeting.
No, so what'll happen is now that I'm building budget with all the directors and department heads, that 7% will be worked into that. It will come back to a study session, and then it will come back to open session for a budget to be adopted, and that will be reflected in it. So that's the public part of the engagement.
Okay. One more question. In regards to, we have a whole lot of retirees we're an old city and such. I was just wondering what the cost is for our retirees' health care, because a lot of our retirees have health care that they're getting paid for, that they're not even being employed for. All the while, we're getting, employees are getting cuts taken from them. I'm just kind of curious on how that all works and how that plays into it.
Carrie can get you the exact number. That's a really good question. That's called OPEB, other post-employment benefits. That's another unfunded liability that isn't being accounted for by anybody in these conversations yet. We're tracking it, we're accounting for it, but it's a significant number. So if you're a Tier 1 Classic member, you get that benefit from Tier 1 and beyond. After Tier 1, that's been changed, so that'll eventually fall off the books. And at a certain age, those retired employees do move to Medicare, and that reduces the city's cost. But you're quite astute in asking that question because it's a significant number. So all the retirees that have gone ahead of us are getting that. But more importantly, this is the conversation I keep wanting to have with the employees. We have to be abundantly cautious to continue to drill down on unfunded liability to keep the ARC payment affordable, because the second we make an 80% payment, every single one of those retirees will be as mad at me, if not more mad at me, than you, because their checks are going to go down by 20%, right? So as much as I'm, the evil guy on the island today, there's a huge vested benefit for all of us to get the financial house in order and demonstrate true financial discipline to protect your pension when you retire, protect those who've retired ahead of us and those who will come after us. But the interesting part that I was sort of speaking to and speaking about at this city managers conference with the League of California Cities, what's happening, and Joe Nation does a really good conversation and presentation about this. At one point, we had about 3.5 people paying for the retirees. So as we press down on revenue and try to align our budgets, what happens? We in Corona, for 10 years, we've been reducing staffing levels, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's how you balance your budget. It's a good short-term fix. It's the right thing to do. It's what you do at home when you have less money, you buy less stuff, right? But what happens is we're getting to a point now where we have, or will soon be, 1.5 employees paying for all of the retirees, which is going to push down more pressure. So we're sort of, for lack of a better analogy, not to freak anyone out, we're in a death spiral, right? We need to find a way to break this cycle, spread out the debt a little bit longer, pay a little bit more toward it. All cities need to do this so that we can staff up to the right size again, not necessarily staff up, but we certainly don't want to go backwards. As President Perez pointed out, it's not going to be a fun place to be. What's Corona going to look like with less of us, right? We've been cutting for 10 years and there's not many left. You've been here a number of times, and I appreciate your investment of time. And if we can just continue to work to get all the folks that are organized labor folks into these conversations to understand the numbers, actually read these presentations, I think I'll be less evil and the problem will be pointed to where it really is, which is revenue, expense, and PERS. It's not Darryl, it's not Carrie, it's not the council. We're all just doing our best to sort of keep the ship afloat and make sure that all the retirees ahead of us and all the retirees after us get paid.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Josh.
Mr. Montanez?
Thank you. I just want to make a quick comment about economic development. I do work a lot with economic development and the businesses here, and I just wanted to point out that our economic development is far from a cheerleading squad. Corona has the highest number of Fortune 1000 companies in Riverside County, and I believe even San Bernardino County. So we have been doing a great job. If you look at the number of jobs, the number of buildings that some of our larger businesses have been taking over, and even some of our small and medium businesses and how much they've been growing, and the number of employees that they've been adding. So our economic development department has been doing a great job in not only bringing new businesses, but also growing the ones that are here. Thank you.
Mr. Haley, did you have any comments?
Yeah, I do. It's a tough meeting, huh? It's a really, really, really tough meeting. And I'm glad we're having it because at least we've got all the cards on the table. The term transparency has been used many, many times, and I think this is probably the most transparent meeting I've been to in about 6 years or so. I think I think the underlying crux is this, is that if a person is making $100 a week and they're making it on $100 a week, and then all of a sudden, all these other expenses keep going up, what has to happen is you have to make some cuts. And I'm not here to oversimplify this because you people are too sophisticated to understand that. But you do know this, that we live here, and we live here, go to school here, church, and grocery stores here. We have to look at you, and we have to work with you, and we're our neighbors. And we have to make some tough decisions. And we've got this 800-pound gorilla called PERS that is just doing a horrible job. Everybody knows it. Sergeant Perez was most eloquent by talking about that, and Captain Walsh as well. We all know that they're doing a horrible job, and there's not much that we in the city can do about it. But you know what? We have friends who are other elected officials in other cities, and we all get together periodically and have a cup of coffee and say, what the heck can we do? And we're trying to fight Sacramento, and it's incredibly difficult. And I know it's real easy to shoot the messenger, and it's real easy to sit up and say, well, you should have done this, you should have done that. Well, I shouldn't have bet on the Patriots last weekend too, but I did. What we're trying to do, ladies and gentlemen, is try to make the best of a horrible, horrible, horrible situation. And I just hope that we can get, I don't know, patience, understanding, I don't know, but that's what we're trying to do, because I realize that we're cutting into grocery bills and we're cutting into tuition payments and car payments and vacations and things like that. I know that. But we have to work at this damn thing together. We really, really do. So as far as the people who came, who are employees of the city, I thank you very, very much for coming here and giving us your heartfelt thinking. And we're working with you. We really, really are working with you. And I want to thank Mrs. Eden, because this is a tough report for her to make, and she's a nice lady. But we are working with you. We're working together. Thank you.
I think my colleagues have addressed most of the issues. Ms. Eden and I have been up to Sacramento a couple times with, as Mr. Perez had said, that we do express our concerns and trying to get, and the problem is it's a system that we all are part of that we just can't leave. They have us held hostage. We have to pay out what we owe in order to leave. That's why we're trying to look at other ways to work around it. And the types of investment that Mr. Scott talked about is one of the key factors, and that is that they are told by the state legislature, who says we don't have anything to do with CalPERS, but yet the legislature has given direction that they need to be clean investments. They're not caring about our ROI, return on investment. They're just caring about the types of investments. And so this culmination of that, as well as Mr. Scott explained pretty well, on the lack of giving us accurate numbers for so many years. In fact, this, I know that Mr. Morgan mentioned about 10 years. Well, this has only been to a head in the last 5 years with CalPERS. We've been telling them, questioning the actuarials. They've only, in the last 5 years, said that there may be a problem. And so when you're having the people who are running our pension program and taking our dollars, and we're not sure what they were doing, and I don't think they knew what they were doing. You know, this is part of the challenge that we're trying to get control back over. And I know that Mr. Perez was actively looking for someone to represent the best interests of our cities, because there is not the best interest up there in speaking on behalf. So our representatives within all of our associations have gone to Sacramento, are speaking, are trying to get changes made, as well as the support from Ms. Eden and myself and my colleagues. We're speaking out with the League of California Cities, and we can't seem to get people to think there's a problem. many of the cities are saying the state will take care of it. Well, those of you know, the state will not take care of it. They're not taking care fully of their own, let alone our obligations. So we have to figure out how best we can work through this, and working together is the only way we can do it. And I appreciate all the associations that have worked. We have not always agreed. We haven't come to terms, but I appreciate at least talking and how we can get there and suggestions. Rather than pointing fingers and making accusations that we don't know what we're doing. And there's more to the story that we need to have a little more participation. If you've got suggestions, we've been open. That's what Charting the Path was about. We've been asking for suggestions. If you know of some ideas, some input, some suggestions, we're very much open. There's not going to be a magic bullet, but we have to somehow work together to get to the end of making this work for us. If there's no other comments, we will move on to the next presentation, which will be, sorry, Ryan, this is good news. This is an economic update on the disposition development agreement with Lab Holdings. So will our Economic Development Coordinator, Ryan Cortez, please address this?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just wanted to bring back before you a brief update on activity with the Lab Holdings deal that we entered into in May. As you recall, the agreement originally was 180-day escrow with, at the developer's sole discretion, opportunity to extend the escrow 2 additional terms of 90 days. They have extended the first 90 days, and we got word this past week that they do plan to extend for the additional 90 days. At this point in time, they have retained a broker and working to negotiate on any private real estate that they can acquire. You see here, you'll notice that everything in purple and green is controlled by the city, but everything in blue is privately owned. That being said, there's still 21 private parcels within this project that they need to get a hand on, whether it's acquiring and or coming to terms with them. One of the biggest issues that they're facing right now is long-term sustainability of maintenance for the project. Currently, the Corona Mall maintenance is funded through a business improvement district that is due to expire on June 30th of 2020. So for those who want to participate in the project, they're working to negotiate on what the long-term plan looks like in assisting to maintain it to the standard of a Lab Holdings project. There's been recent discussion and lots of questions on whether we are or not in escrow. I assure you we are in escrow. I'm pleased with Lab Holdings thus far in communicating. They met with almost every single private owner, shared with them visions, what their projects are. As background, Lab Holdings is actually an acronym for Little American Business, primarily boutique retail. If you're familiar with any of their projects, I'm sure the community is. Very specialized in what they do. And so I just wanted to bring it back to you and share that they do plan to extend through the entire 360-day escrow as they work through these final issues. As there's any more updates, we'll continue to keep you up to date. With that, any questions you may have, be happy to answer.
Can I dovetail on Ryan's presentation real quick? You know, it's been said in the community that, you know, this is really easy to do and you know, it's just, let's go stomp out the fire and build something already. This is truly an exceptionally difficult project. It has a business improvement district on it. We only own half the property. The other half that we don't own, the sellers are looking for roughly $300 a square foot, which you can buy a fairly nice coastal property for. Has aging infrastructure. None of the properties are contiguous. So Lab Holdings Corp. was actually brought to us from Councilmember Montanez. He was mayor at the time. If they can't make this work, this is sort of right in their wheelhouse. What they do is they prefer not to tear things down. They try to take existing structure, which drives the cost down, and sort of create a cool, hip vibe by keeping it sort of, I don't know, sultry and a little bit industrial. You know, they create food and dining opportunities and cheese caves and just really sort of fun, gritty things that the millennials really like to go to, and even old guys like myself. But if the Lab Holdings Corp can't make this work, the city has very few tools to be successful. And if somebody can crack the code, man, I'll buy them a hamburger and I'll sit and listen quietly. Because the city doesn't have any tools in terms of condemnation at this point in time. With redevelopment agencies going out of business, the city's ability to bring a deal together for people who don't want to sell, like block number 6, not interested in selling, like what they have, like the revenue it generates, not interested. I can go down through a lot of these. Honey's Restaurant, not interested in selling. You just keep going down the list, and some people are happy with the way it is. So we're hopeful that in this next 90 days that Shaheen and the Lab Holding Corps, who are truly top tier with all the stuff they've done, can bring some of the folks to the table and sort of get over that $300 a foot hurdle or whatever they get them to. Because being at 6th and Main in Corona, within view shed of the 91 freeway, which carries 500,000 people a day, this is a great piece of property. And we've pitched it every which way over the last number of years. None of the developers have been able to make it work. Not the city. I mean, Joanne's team has been exceptional in opening up the zoning, creating mixed use. Anything that generally creates a hurdle for developers creates risk, and the more risk, the less likely they are to engage. So Joanne's team has opened the door to sort of get the palette open, have some level of discretion with them, but let them sort of think about what a downtown should look like and be. Ryan headed up a team of millennials called the Next Gens that looked at what 6th Street should look like between the circles and how we create that pedestrian downtown atmosphere. So we've sort of set the palette, but it goes back to the same old thing each and every time, which is that darn performa. It's pesky. People don't like to do a lot of charity work in the development business. So until we can tweak on the model in some fashion to get the performa to work, we're going to be here again. So I guess my hope is in the next 90 days, Lab cracks the code. And if not, anyone out there who has the code, I'm good for a free hamburger, ready to listen. So with that, that's it.
Hang loose there, Ryan. Mr. Morgan?
Joe Morgan, 2063 Rent. So it seems like I might as well come up here since you guys were referring to the fact that I was asking what was going on. This deal was announced to much fanfare and with a schedule and all this talk about what they were going to do and all this cool stuff. Then it goes radio silence. They were supposed to be here last fall with a proposal. They were going to do the market studies and they were going to have the plan and they were going to be here last fall. I thought, hey, I wonder what's going on. So found out that basically when, you're very much misrepresenting what's going on as far as what Lab's doing. Lab is offering people very generous dirt price, but Honey's is in business. So when you offer Honey's $400,000 to go away, they're not likely to go away. They're not serious about what they're going to do. They basically want to scrape the thing. It says all improvements will be removed. I'm not a developer, but when you say all improvements will be removed, that means scrape. Doesn't mean they're going to change the planners. They want to tear it down. They want to buy the whole place and knock it down and build something else. That may or may not be the case, but it seems like if you're going to come around and you're going to offer existing businesses that are in business in the downtown area some fraction of what they paid for the property plus their ongoing income, you're probably not going to get a lot of takers. If you're coming around asking, you're offering $100 a square foot, you're not going to get a lot of people that are going to take that. Now, my beef with the whole thing is, why don't we know anything about this? It's our mall. It's our downtown. Why should I have to do a record request and try to get emails, which, and then the next request that I made, I wonder if there's anything else going on, because I know the escrow was supposed to expire in December, so I do another one. Turns out there's only 4 emails back and forth with Ryan and the guy from Lab. Hey, can I get the keys? Can I get the keys for Wednesday? So you guys have all gone radio silence. Apparently you decided, since I'm looking at it, that you're gonna conduct your business by smoke signals or, some kind of, you learned ASL or something and did it by Skype, Why don't you just, this is what's the matter with this place. You wanna know how the mall's gonna get fixed? When you're gone and the rest of you guys are gone, that's when it's gonna get fixed. Because you've spent so long protecting your buddies on the south side of town, and not wanting to do something with the mall, actively trying to drown the mall. You could work with the businesses that are down there. You don't have to have a complete clear field to make that place work. You act like we're the only city in the world that's ever tried to do a downtown. Every city has downtown, except for us. Every city. Thank you very much.
Dean, can you explain when they're in the negotiations of property that's not all public? Can you explain how that works?
Are you asking when the developer is in negotiations?
Right, when Ryan's talking, is this, just clarify how all this process works? Or Ryan, if you want to.
Well, we're not in negotiations with them. They're in having their own personal, right now they're undergoing their due diligence in the escrow process to determine if they want to close escrow with us and proceed with the project. So they're trying to determine if they can obtain control of enough of the property to do what they plan to do with the overall development. So that process is about what they're doing, and I don't believe we're really privy to what those conversations are. So this is not the city negotiating with anybody. It's the developer trying to determine if they're going to go forward.
Did you?
Dean is correct. Again, it's private negotiations on how much additional property that they can acquire, and for those that they can acquire, if they can come to terms on coming up with a solution on maintenance after the business improvement district expires in 2020, whether it's renewing it or whether it's putting together association like most shopping centers have. So those have been the conversations yet. They did make initial offers and have come back to the table. They've hired on representation from NAI Capital, a broker, to go back and actually meet with the businesses further, do more of analysis and come back and, again, just negotiate. It's private negotiations. That said, up to date, but not involved in those as it's between two private entities.
So what's going on right now is there's sort of a parallel course. The Lab Holdings Corp. themselves, as well as their broker, have been engaging in meetings with the properties that the city doesn't own. At the same time, emails going back and forth that the resident alluded to were really about, can you get into different buildings on different days because they have to do phase 1 testing. Some of the buildings have had poor maintenance over a long period of time because they've been closed. So they get mold, they get a lot of things. So they have to go in and sort of understand the impact of that level of disrepair to be able to understand the cost to put it back together again. So due diligence is going on one hand, negotiations on the other. And as the resident does, oftentimes told half the story because there's businesses there where they own the business and the building. Honey's is not one of those, where there's someone who owns the building and there's one who runs the business. So that really gets you into a point where you have to negotiate with two parties, one to buy the business and the second to buy the building. That's also the same with some of the other food operators in that area. So again, it's not as easy as it sounds. It's multiple people, it's multiple parcels, but multiple owners within those parcels. And then more importantly, it's the BID. How do you keep it going? Because as those buildings empty out and they're owned by a single owner, he now becomes responsible for the entire amount of those monies being generated on the tax bill to maintain the entire mall. So there's a lot of things that put downward pressure on the performance. But with that said, if we can get them to the next level and they can strike enough deals where they have no interest in scraping it. The project absolutely doesn't work scraped. If you scrape that project, it's going to take a vastly different look because property in the downtown's, more than $1 million an acre. So by the time you try to amortize $9 million across that, you need to go vertical and you need to do a lot of things that the community probably isn't going to like. So Lab Holdings can only be successful if they can do adaptive reuse on the buildings and create that sense of cool and some water features in the middle and lights and that kind of thing. So that's what they're trying to get through is the critical mass to be able to deploy a mass sort of a refacing of all of it. Once they know or don't know that they can do that, let's assume for the best that they can, that's when the next round of public engagement actually starts. So as much as the resident would want to say, everything we do is secret, if you sort of look at everything that's going on the website, and the budgets, and TVs, and Facebook, and YouTube, we're pushing all this data out all the time. It's because we're looking for feedback, and so will the Lab Holdings Corp. Once they go to the next level, if they're going to go to the next level, that's when they start with the community engagement. What do you want to see downtown? Because it makes no sense for a developer to spend significant numbers of millions and build something that no one wants. So there'll be neighborhood meetings, downtown meetings, all over Corona kind of meetings to say, do you want brew pubs? Do you want distilleries? Do you want cheese cave? Do you want clothes? Try to figure it out so it becomes that hip, cool place to go to, like the Lab and like the camp and, a lot of these other things that he's done, 3rd Street. So it's a process. It will be very public. There will be engagement. But at this moment in time, they're really just trying to figure out, are the buildings toxic and can we build with what we have? And how many of the other people will sell to us, both the owner and the business operator? Because there are 2 layers oftentimes. So I think Ryan's done a good job and actually Cynthia and Joanne's department of giving almost immediate access. Ryan's been taking calls sometimes as late as 2 and 3 in the morning, as these are very creative people. So, they're at a music venue and they get an idea and then they'll literally call Ryan and he'll talk to him. And the next day he goes and opens up the theater because they had an idea for the old theater where it would be sort of a dinner house with small music venue. Cool stuff, right? 3 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was. Hazard pay for Ryan, but it is a public process. But this part of it isn't public. It can't be. We're not involved in it. They're not involved in it. It's really the proposed buyer and the proposed seller or not proposed seller. Once they get enough control, if they do, then it becomes public. Then it goes forward to the normal DPR committee, planning, back to council. So even if we get them to go forward, it's still, significant number of months off. And there will be time for public comment. But I appreciate Ryan taking time to sort of put together that picture, because that picture sort of is worth 1,000 words, and that you can see how much we don't own in terms of square footage. And that's what's driving the pressure on the pro forma that puts the project at risk.
How many owners were there originally with that mall?
I can tell you originally on the north side, don't quote me on this, I believe it's 36 parcels total. And there is 27 condominiums within those condominiums, divided into numerous suites. So many businesses and then many property owners. So again, I know Mr. Telber alluded to that, as in some certain instances we're dealing with, the developers dealing with private business and private ownership. So there's another wrench into the works. I will share that they have actually spent time here. They were, in the last 2 weeks, they visited 3 other suites that they have ideas for, one being the former theater, as well as 2 restaurant spaces. They have ideas for those. They have users that are very, very interested, things I think the community would very, very much enjoy, breweries and pubs and those types of things. And furthermore, they've actually spent time here on the weekends that really unbeknownst to most of the public, just going to some of our major shopping centers. They went to Crossings, Dos Lagos, spent time at McKinley, and just kind of got a feel for the community, drove the community, and just actually popped in with some random residents, didn't share who they were, and just started asking some very basic questions. Just, what do you think about this? Do you like this restaurant? Just to get a feel for the community. They did this, they didn't want to be, they wanted to be discreet. So I was actually surprised when I got a call and said, oh, we were here, by the way, this past weekend, and we plan to come out another weekend. So with that, though, any additional questions, happy to answer.
Thank you very much. Okay, our next item was put on the agenda because this past weekend was a very challenging weekend, I think is what we could call it, with, and I'll have the chiefs kind of share, but our officers and our firefighters were under a lot of emotional stress through some situations that were occurring in our community. And anytime we're dealing with children, it even intensifies. And just send out to your team, both of you, that we appreciate what they went through and hope that they're all recovering from that. And with that, I'd like Chief Patton and Chief Duffy to share a little bit about child safety.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just a couple short comments. Two tragic events occurred over the past weekend, one involving a 2-year-old and one involving a 3-year-old. We're not able to discuss a lot of details of these incidents at this time, but the Corona Police Department and the Corona Fire Department want to extend our condolences to the family and let them know that we're here for them. That's all I have for my statement.
Okay. It's a very unusual weekend, and I just wanted us to have that known. Okay, we now have item 2, oral communications from the public. And we do have several cards. We'll begin Russ Leonard, followed by Tom Richens, and then Don Fuller.
Good evening, Council. Can you hear me okay? Okay. So I want to start by saying we're back, baby. As in, the Corona General Employees Association is back to talk to you about the press release that was issued on January 31st, titled Corona's Booming Economy, We're Back, Baby. It went on to say that Corona is singing the joys of a bustling economy, with numbers back to, if not better, than pre-recession levels. Wow. A lot has changed in 3 months when we were presented with these numbers at the fact finding. Gotta get like 10 seconds put back on the clock. Got it? Okay, so this is from slide 10 of the city's fact-finding presentation. Pay particular note to fiscal year 21-22. It's that last column on the end there. And it shows the city's going to be broke and insolvent at that point. So what I'd like to do now is switch to another slide. Here. This is slide 21 from the December 20th, and also the one that she just did, Ms. Eden just did. Somehow we're at $22.9 million. So we went from being broke to having $22.9 million. The city's entire reason for the imposition on the general employees was predicated on the city's dire financial state. And miraculously, after impasse, there's suddenly abundance of money in the reserve. Yes, I'm talking about the $19 million in positive variance. And I get, Ms. Eden, that you can't be exact on the variance at the end of the year, but at least be close. I mean, $19 million is huge. I don't know how we can trust your numbers. I really don't. Talbert and council have mentioned coming back to the table a number of times at council meetings. In fact, we met with Mr. Talbert and Ms. Eden and Higginbotham on January 25th. It was made very clear that they're not open to negotiating with us, not until July at least. So, council members, if you want to get back under contract, you need to speak with your city manager and get on the same page. Is he your boss or are you the boss? Despite what the press release said, the generals will tell you a different story. The morale of the generals is an all-time low. More and more of our coworkers are leaving, causing workloads to increase and a decrease of services to citizens. For example, there is no longer a certified fire apparatus mechanic. We're barely maintaining the minimum standards for our fire rigs. We're not doing preventative maintenance, and we're often without a ladder truck. I mean, this gets down to public safety. I know CalPERS is the big bad monster, but we've got to stop making them the scapegoat for all our problems. Other cities have these problems too, but they care enough to retain their employees that they're willing to pay higher wages to draw the best talent. And we are losing employees left and right because we're not doing that. I'm sorry to say, newsflash, no, we're not back. Our coworkers aren't back, our benefits aren't back, our pay isn't back. Council, please help us understand where we go from here when your city management doesn't want to sit down with us. Thank you.
Mayor and Council, I just am so happy that President Russ Leonard of the Corona General Employees Association is starting to now use the Corona Fire apparatus as a bargaining chip. That's a new one. It's very disappointing. So the press release, as Carrie described, sort of celebrates the market conditions, not the general fund's conditions. Jobs are back, business licenses are up, people are still choosing to come to Corona. What Mr. Leonard presents to you is a story, fictional story, presented by a union president who's focused solely, almost exclusively on regaining benefits that exceed $18,000 a year for a family in terms of insurance, 28 paid days of leave, things we just can no longer afford to do. So although there's variance in the numbers at the end of the year, we've tried time and time again. For 18 months, we did food and finance forums to explain to the general employees, the supervisors. Police and fire were there to help us and bring clarity sometimes. But what you have to understand about budget variance, it isn't cash variance. The budget includes book transactions. So it goes up sometimes because you added a new building. It goes down sometimes because you've depreciated an asset and it's off the books. The cash variance is what you're looking at, and we're always in single-digit variances. There are probably not many people in this room that in their personal life and their personal checkbooks can consistently do 1% variances year over year, especially on a $145 million budget. The conversation has grown weary. I would love to get back to the table and find a way to have labor peace and celebrate the many successes that Corona is having. However, the Corona General Employees Union and their battery of attorneys have taken to literally wasting taxpayer money and burying Dean's office with PERB filing after PERB filing after PERB filing, to the point where last week I found myself in a room where I never thought I would be negotiating with 2 union representatives to let me fix a fire apparatus. The generals are putting the public at risk for the sole and exclusive purpose to leverage us to give back benefits we just can no longer afford. I find that distasteful and unacceptable, and I pledge to you and I pledge to them that as long as I'm here and helping you run the city, yes, you are my bosses, as he asked. Clearly, I'll tell him, you are my bosses. But I will not put the public at risk over union antics. And I'm quite certain that Union President, Fire President Trevor is probably a little shocked that CGA is now speaking on his behalf, because earlier this morning around 7:30, I had my first meeting with him. He said, actually, the fire fleet's in great condition. You and Carrie have delivered more new engines than we've seen in years. The ladder trucks are both running right now. Great. The employee that left, our one fire mechanic, we ran numbers, we sat him down, and we actually showed him he was leaving for a job that paid him less money. However, he made a business decision for his family. In fact, we showed him for the next 3 years he'd make less money, and even on the 4th year after he topped out in the new location, he'd be making less money. It was closer. He wasn't enjoying his work environment with his coworkers. It was better for him. There's nothing we can do about that. But I think as long as we continue to have Corona General employees, union leaders come to the dais and spend time and taxpayer money trying to leverage us back to the table, at some point the public's going to find that distasteful and give us the feedback that we're looking for. And it's time to balance the budget with true financial discipline, doing the right thing, giving all of us, myself included, benefits similar to what they take home every year. And to that end, you guys are doing that. You're holding my feet to the fire, you're holding all of us to the fire, and we will balance the budget. And we will maintain our great employees, because they understand the problem is PERS. You know, Russ will try to tell you it's not. I find it odd because both the police president and fire president came up and said, yeah, that's the big bad wolf. They've been spending their own money to fly to Sacramento and tell PERS, you need to stop. Now's the time, enough's enough. You guys have flown there. You know, you've all, had meetings with Sabrina Cervantes and Senator Roth. We're doing what we can, but I refuse to be leveraged by the unions to spend taxpayer money we no longer have. We will not kick this can down the street. Now is the time. we need to get back to work. Thanks.
Before we close that subject, I do want to make sure that we clarify that the health care of that 18,000 you're referring to is not taken away totally.
No, actually, we had a reduction. There was a benefit that was created some time ago that sort of got distorted, for lack of a better word, where we had employees actually taking insurance they didn't need to be able to cash out up to $1,400 a month in benefit buyout, essentially. So they were taking $1,400 that was meant to be paying for insurance and taking it in cash and then taking the insurance they didn't need and sort of wasting it. That's what went away. Now what we're offering is insurance for a family, and Carrie can correct me, but from memory, I mean, there's so many numbers floating around, but from memory, it's around $18,000 a year for a family. That's a fair benefit. That's a strong benefit. You know, we pay for husband, wife, and children. That doesn't happen on the private side a lot. It's a fair benefit. People here work really hard. I got to tell you, all of them. They all work really hard, and it's fair. It's comparable to what's going on in Riverside. And so when we take a comparable snapshot of where we are in the market, our benefits are still on the strong side. So thank you for that question.
Mayor, may I also comment? I'd like to respond to some of the comments that Russ had made.
Please.
Yesterday, I actually had a food and finance forum for my department, and I did invite the general board members to attend, which they did. Russ and 3 of his fellow board members attended the meeting, and this meeting covered different terms that are used in the comprehensive annual financial report. I specifically went over what is fund balance, what is budget variance, and the year-end update that I gave you in December, basically the same information was provided to these group of employees. I specifically went over the budget variance for fiscal year ending 17 to where I broke it down. The $18 million that was in budget variance, $10 million of it was from CIPs that were not completed. That budget is rolling forward. It's not new money that gets to recommitted. I also talked about $1.5 million being in purchase orders. So I go through all this detail, and then for him to come to this meeting one day later and talk about this budget variance, he doesn't know what the numbers are. He can't trust me and the numbers, and I just took time to explain it, break it down. If he still comes here and makes those kind of comments, I don't know what I can do to help him understand when I just did it yesterday. This isn't about the numbers being wrong. It's simply, here's the budget, it was unspent. It creates a budget variance, period.
Okay. Tom Richens, Don Fuller, and Paul De La Hoya.
Tom Richens, 1031 East Grand Boulevard. I'm afraid to get up here, so I might duck. I'd have 3 minutes. As a citizen with this, I didn't realize the meeting was going to go this long on budgets. I didn't prepare comments, but listening to it, I do have one comment, and it would be for everybody in the room. And that would be to keep maintaining transparency, keep maintaining honesty. I don't think in this situation anybody has good news, both sides. I really personally, just one who follows Corona politics, I don't know what side to take. But I do advocate honesty and transparency for everyone at all times. So, for my original subject, and to beat an old horse, I'm gonna kick this can down the road and in the road and run it over. But there was a council person whose campaign contributions was released on Citizens for Corona this week. And I went through it and I added up the developer money, and it came to $24,000 in 6 months. And I won't name the council person, but in 6 months, this council person collected $24,000. That averages to $137 a day from a developer. And I promise you, these developers, they don't donate for fun. They do not donate because they love you guys.
They donate it because there's something in it for them. The citizens are aware of this. With social media, I'm blasting it. I think a lot of people are blasting it. And I think if you talk to most of the citizens, they would tell you, stop taking these campaign contributions from developers. They're not good. They're not good for the city. It needs to end. It hurts. It hurts because you have these developers that then they take their system, they take their property that, yes, they are allowed to develop, but then it gets overdeveloped. Or magically we go from commercial to residential, or magically we go from low-density residential to high-density residential. Here's the other part, and I have 20 seconds. RCTC failed us on the toll road, and I won't go into that, but they failed us. With their design, they've backed up Ontario. And when Arentine builds, you're gonna take an area that's already congested, add all those houses, and it's gonna be an even more failure. And for those of you that accepted campaign I know my time's up, accepted campaign contributions from Arentine, when that project fails, or when people are upset because of those houses and that traffic, your guys' names will be as those who took the money from them. So for the future of your reputations, please stop. Thank you.
Good evening. Don Fuller, 725 Huntley Drive. Nice new lighting in here. Regarding campaign contributions from developers, I just read something interesting in the past couple of days. I read that Councilmember Fox, who is not here tonight, has taken almost $10,000 in campaign contributions from a developer who is building a multi-million-dollar marijuana growing operation. So apparently, Councilmember Fox is now getting money from the marijuana business. We'll have to clear that up a little bit. Ms. Eden said that each taxpayer's share of the deficit in the city was $3,600. I have no reason to doubt her numbers. And Ms. Spiegel said you'd like to have suggestions. I can save you one taxpayer share of the deficit, and I can do it tonight. This past week, I sent to all the council members and the heads of the employee associations this document, a 4-page document, which is kind of summing up the facts of what I've been chasing down on Councilmember Fox, falsifying his expense reports and misusing public funds on that Washington, D.C. junket. And the reason I did that was because I've been coming up here and trying to cover this subject about 3 minutes at a time. I get 6 minutes every month. And it felt like there were some details that were left out, so I thought I'd put this up and send this to everybody just to kind of fill in some of the details. And there's an issue on that, which is that I have said that I should be involved in any meetings involving the review of his expense reports. And I really am an expert. This is what I do. I work with attorneys. I gather evidence. I write reports. I do reports like this for federal courts. I do this for trials. I have 2 depositions coming up in the next couple of weeks. This is what I do for a living, and I think you'll notice if you read this, it's a pretty nice piece of work. You will not find typos or misspelled words in that. So that's what I do. I'm as much of an expert in what I do as the KPMG people were who helped you with the budget on the city, or Mr. Johnson, I think his name was, who helped with the districting. I mean, that's what I do. So if you want to have an expert involved with this, I'm here. Furthermore, it occurred to me that I have never been keeping track of my hours that I spent on this. And all this thing together, I started adding up, well, gee, what if I would have been keeping track of my hours and done my billable hourly rate that I get with attorneys? I'm going to tell you, it would have come to more than the amount that Fox is trying to take out of the city. I'm over that amount. I could have just written you a check and been cheaper. In fact, if I was going to charge you for this, I'm probably at $1,500 to $2,000 for that document. So I am an expert, and I should be considered as an expert in dealing with these kinds of things. So that's all. And I hope we get some action on this. And when he gets back from whatever he's doing in Saipan, then we can follow up on this and perhaps get a resolution on it. I'm just trying to save the money, approximately, Ms. Eden, one taxpayer's share of the deficit, which we could do tonight. Thank you very much. Everybody have a nice evening.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Paul De La Hoya, followed by Josh Wagner and Lindsay Walker.
Paul De La Hoya, Corona General Police Association, Second Vice President. I actually didn't plan on speaking tonight, but I wanted to make some comments about what I've been hearing about tonight. Speaking of the fire apparatus employee was in our association, to us, it's not a good one. It's not a joke to us. It's safety. I know we're not the fire department, and I know we're not the police department, but our employees do work for them. So we take that seriously. It's not a joke to us, and it's been very, very hard for us to stand by and not bring these kind of issues up, because that's exactly what we were afraid was going to happen, was those comments. But what does it say to you guys when one of our employees knows he's going to take a pay cut for 4 years and still says, bye, I want no part of Corona? That's not a joke to us. These are the employees that we represent. It's not games to us. So I think to feed off of, the presentation from yesterday was, it's just weird for us to see these numbers just a few months ago, and it says we're going to be insolvent in 2021, and then just a few months later, we have a variance of, even if we take out the 10 million, we're still at 8.8 million. That's a big jump in just a few months. So what does a few more months mean? I just kind of feel like our associations we're being bullied. We're not bullying anybody. We've lost nearly 50% of our workforce in less than 10 years. That's not us bullying anybody. I see part-time employees taking the jobs of people that used to be full-time, benefited employees, and they're gone, they've been laid off, and they've been supplemented with part-time employees. That's not us bullying anybody. That's just us just been taking it. And I just think that I sit here and I see like 2.7 at 55. Yes, that's a generous retirement. But first of all, it's not the highest, because I could have worked for the sheriffs as a civilian employee and got 3% at 55. So there is better. And I think it's misleading, like all of our association members get that. That's not true. We have tier 3s and tier 4s who do not get that anymore. And we'll never see those again. And as the years go by and we're watching our tier 2s leave, which is probably what you want, but it's what I feel like is happening here. So I just feel like I saw our association getting attacked today, and that's not right. We did everything we possibly could. I mean, we talk about, you said we got a raise, but when you look at the benefit package, yes, it was a nice benefit package, but we've been asking for pay raises for almost 20 years, gotten very little of it. It was the city who kept giving us the benefits instead, and then when you realize the benefits are more expensive, how's that our fault? We're not bullying anybody. We asked for the pay raise. It would have been cheaper in the long run. But my times, I honestly didn't really plan on speaking tonight, but just to watch our association, watch Russ get picked on like that, I didn't think that was right. I think we've done more than our share of helping the city out. Thank you.
Mr. Wagner, followed by Lindsay Walker, followed by Joe Morgan.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Josh Wagner, Corona Employees General Employee. I just, tonight I kind of wanted to speak out to the management and everything like that. Tonight's presentation was all about the general fund. And what I want to say is the Corona Utilities Authority is not part of the general fund at all. None of our income comes from that whatsoever. We're fully self-generated, but yet we take all the same cuts as all the other generals do. And I mean, I'll be honest with you, right now, I've had a couple interviews, and I'm looking at a job right now where my raise of a 2% COLA, I worked here for 8 years, almost 9 years. And my hourly rate is it was $34.80 an hour. It went to $34.50 an hour, okay? But yet I lost $94. I have to pay $94 per pay period now for health insurance. And I got that residual money that I was investing in my retirement of $260 back into my paycheck for my medical difference, because it's just me and my wife. That is now gone. So now I'm not saving for retirement, and I'm losing money every month $180. Meanwhile, I understand since Obamacare kicked in, medical insurance has gone up, 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 and up. It's skyrocketing. Okay, it is true that we have $18,000 worth of coverage. Also, though, my specific plan over this last year went down $180 a pay period. So you guys as a management group already saved $360 a month on my healthcare benefits. And then you're taking away even more and more and more. So the job that I'm looking at right now starts at 39 for the same exact position that I'm in right now. And it tops out at 49 or 48 and change. So it's obvious to me, you guys want all the tier 2s to leave. You guys are driving us out. We don't have any protection here. Tier 1s, they're grandfathered in. You guys are golden. You guys, and that's the whole thing. Your guys' generation's already bought and paid for. You guys financed it on my generation. Now we're paying for all of you guys. When you guys all retire, when you retire at $280,000 a year, we're gonna be paying for that. Same thing with you. And I've seen your guys' paychecks, according to the internet, just continuously rise over the last 5 to 6 years. And we're getting crapped on. So it's been a pleasure working here. I hope I get to stay because I love it here, but I don't know if I can. So thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lindsay Walker. I'm a Corona General employee. I first want to apologize for looking a little disheveled today. I've actually been up since 2:30 this morning, working on the current homicide investigation that we have going on. I'm part of the Corona Generals, working as a forensic tech. So I'm sure most of you saw the press release regarding the homicide that went out today, which kind of leads me into talking about the press release that was released on the 31st, which I know we've covered. I was shocked and saddened by that. You know, our association's been going through months of negotiations, told time and time again that we'd be going insolvent sooner than later. We were confused to read this press release that came out all positive. Confusing is actually an understatement. After being imposed on less than 3 months ago, it felt like a slap in the face to read that. I don't know if that was your intention for it to come out that way, but that's the way it was taken by all of us. Now we've learned about the 7% cut that's coming across the board, so what is it? We're up, we're down. Even facts and figures seem to magically change to best fit the agenda of the city management. You see, after this, I'll be heading home after a 15-hour workday, and I know tomorrow is probably going to be the same, along with many of my coworkers that work the same amount of hours. This roller coaster ride that you have us on is more than I can handle and more than our work group can handle. We've asked you to work with us to try and fix it, and we've been more than willing, and I don't think we've seen that in return. So I just want to end with a question. You know, which one of you up there, which one of you would chase a man with a gun? Which one of you would run into a burning building? Which one of you would have to photograph a deceased child at an autopsy like I did? Which one of you would do that? Let me follow up that question with, which one of you would do it without the proper equipment and personnel to do it safely? Because that's what your 7% is going to do. Thank you.
Joe Morgan, followed by Giselle, and then Roxanne Bickham.
I guess we'll just cut to the chase. I'll just introduce myself as a resident. So your 7% thing, it's kind of cute. It's kind of cute what you tried to do there. You made a council decision on a budget, and you did it in closed session. That you can't do that. Budgets are decided here. You can only have closed session for litigation, personnel matters, contract negotiations. You can't just decide that you're going to trim the budget in every department by 7%. You're not deciding that you're going to cut Lindsay's money by 7%. Yeah, that's a closed session item, but you can't decide you're going to cut a department by 7% at closed session. That's absolutely not right. I'd be curious to hear what the city attorney, how he tries not to say that you're wrong, or that I'm wrong or whatever. It'll be kind of cute to watch that. So we have to pay extra here because this is a very poorly run city. Everybody knows it. Everybody from other cities talks about it. I talked to plenty of people from other cities and working in other cities. Everybody knows what's going on here. This is basically a little kangaroo court, kind of third world sort of everybody and their buddies running the place. You hire your friends and bring them along, from the bottom. That's why we're in the mess that we're in. And I notice your 7% cut. You still got your car allowances. I notice those aren't going anywhere. So we're scraping the bottom of the barrel here, banging around, looking for dimes and nickels, but you still got your car allowance. So, and as far as Ms. Eden's, or this $20 million thing, it's $20 million every year. If you didn't spend the money, then you didn't spend the money. It's still a variance. You can try to paint it however you want, but if you didn't do something, you didn't spend the money, and that's a variance. And near as I can tell, $20 million, which is on average what it's been for the last 5 years, that's 14%. That's not single digits. So, and previously, so this, you seem to be, I hear Mr. Haley talking about the Brown Act all the time, that gosh darn Brown Act. You don't seem to give a crap about it when it really matters. You can come up here and have an extended discussion, have, this mutual reinforcement thing about, gosh, what a good job that we do, because the union rep comes up here and states the case for his union and lists his grievances, which is what this is all about. But you don't have a problem, when it gets a little close to home, coming up here and having some extended discussion. By my reading of the Brown Act, that's really pushing it. When you're up here, having this big presentation about how bad everything is and how fairly you've treated everybody, and he says that you're not. Generally, from what I've seen from my years of coming to these meetings, you guys are tight-lipped every single time. You never say anything. You never say a word. If people ask you if the lights are on in here, you won't say yes. But when it gets close to home, when it gets close to the truth, that's when you fight back. Thank you very much.
Just a little clarification, I will respond to his question, sort of. The comment of the 7% is, we did not vote on anything. The budget is put together suggesting or a target of 7% less per department, the whole budget. So there's nothing been voted on. It's just direction to present a budget to vote on. Then discussion can have. Otherwise, he's leading an organization without any direction as far as how much the budget. And in terms of the comments, when the items are on the agenda, which the 4 presentations were on the agenda, there's a difference in the public comments, so things can be responded to. And Mr. Attorney?
Mayor, if I can just add to that, I think it's a matter of terminology. Within the performance evaluation with your city manager, you can give him performance direction, and that's what was done. So to call it a decision to reduce the budget by 7%, I think is just not the right terminology. The direction was given to him to present you with a budget that reflects that.
With nothing voted on yet.
Correct.
Okay, so we have Giselle, followed by Roxanne, Wes Speak, and then April Shelby.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I'm here to invite you all to our select committee hearing on career technical education and the 21st century workforce, which will be taking place this Friday at Norco College. Many of you attended our previous select committee hearing when we attained the $2 million for the Veterans Resource Center at Norco College, and it's going to be held in the exact same room, CSS 217. And basically, this is to, we have several manufacturers. Actually, we have a booming manufacturing industry in Western Riverside County, and we also have a very strong CTE program. CNUSD CTE program is actually highly recognized throughout the state. And since we have, and we also have the partnership through Norco College and their apprenticeship program, and Dr. Reese, who's been doing a fantastic job in bolstering the Boots to Books program, which is taking our veterans and our military and getting them into the workforce as fast as possible. So this is really to connect those paths. We expect that there's going to be a 1 million skilled workforce shortage by 2025. And we want to ensure that here, where we do have this bustling manufacturing and commerce, that we have the appropriate folks and workforce to fill these jobs. But most of our manufacturing actually takes place in Southern California, so we need to keep these jobs here, and we want to keep people here. We always hear about the brain drain within Riverside County. So I'd love to have you join us. We actually have several people from the city as well as the region speaking. We have Kimberly Davidson making public comment. We have Bobby Spiegel, who's going to speak to the chamber and the Manufacturers Council that's been happening with the city. We have Jamil Dada from the Workforce Development Board. We actually have Dr. Gina Boster from the CNUSD program. She runs the program. She will be speaking as well. I really hope you can make it. It's going to be an informative event, and really we want to come out with legislation or the understanding of the resources needed to fill this gap. So thank you so much.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and community members. My name is Roxanne Bickham. I'm a Community Development Manager for the American Cancer Society. And first of all, I'd like to thank all of you for your continued support for our local outreach here in Corona. Cancer is a very serious topic, and it touches so many families and way too many here in the city of Corona. I know that there are people here on the council as well as in the audience that have personally been affected by cancer or have had family members affected by it. Cancer knows no discrimination. 1 in 2 men, 1 in 3 women, and approximately 1 in 125 children will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. We never want to have to hear these words, but we know that it can happen. If you have to hear those words, it's better to be diagnosed at stage 1 or 2 versus stage 3 or 4. And then when you're going through your treatments, you're hoping for the least invasive course of treatment as possible. The American Cancer Society is here to help you guys. We were established in 1913. That's right, 105 years ago. And we are the #1 funder for private, or we're the #1 private funder for research, only second to the federal government. 40 of our funded researchers have gone on to win the Nobel Prize for their research in cancer, so we're very proud for the people that we are funding. Some of the results of that was the invention of the mammogram and the pap smear. So for the women here, where would we be without these 2 types of screenings? Some of the things that we're continuing to work on is targeted gene therapy, where you can take a medication and it'll target just the cancer cell and not your whole immune system. I'm proud to say that with our organization, 93 cents of every dollar goes to research, funding, free services, and outreach into our communities. Only 7 cents on a dollar goes to running our organization. 2 worst parts of my job are to talk to someone and have them tell me that either them or their family member has been diagnosed with cancer. The second worst part is that they tell me that they wish they'd known about the things that we can help them through their cancer journey. So my focus is to do outreach, obviously fundraising in the community, but outreach and education on cancer prevention and early detection, as well as act as a liaison to the free services and resources that we have. A couple of those items are, we have an 800 number that's open 24/7, 365. We never close. They can call us anytime and speak with a cancer information specialist. And we also have our Road to Recovery program where we can assist with transportation to and from treatments if someone's too ill to drive themselves. The Relay for Life event is our signature fundraiser event that's coming up on May 19th at Santana Park. It is a 24-hour event. I thank the fire and PD department. They do an annual team with us. I encourage the city council to do a team as well. We have a new campaign coming up called Power in Purple, and I'm looking for community members to step up their game and supporting the cause by wearing purple in the 30 days leading up to the event and committing to personally raise $1,000. I have flyers here for that. I'll leave them here. I have enough for the members as well as the council. So again, I would like to thank you for your ongoing support, and we hope to see you on the track.
Thank you, Roxanne. Wes speak. Is Wes still here? You can go ahead. You're here.
April Shelby, 969 Bingham Drive, to the mayor, city council, fellow citizens. This is my first city council meeting, so please forgive me for my ignorance. I do have several questions about CalPERS. How do I go? Okay, so there is a management plan, if I'm correct, to cut the budget for overall the city 7%. What exactly would be the ways that we would get down that 7%? I heard several things tonight, such as a tax increase, cutting the number of city employees, which seems to be an issue, development, increasing property taxes. What would be those solutions? Also, it seems that the Sacramento, the state legislatures are being blamed for the issue of CalPERS. What solutions do you all have for the California state legislature, as they seem to be the reason as to why this issue has occurred, but I have not heard yet a solution tonight. Thank you very much.
I just want to respond because some of that information may have not been shared clearly, that the Sacramento wasn't necessarily blamed except for their direction for their investment portfolio. So we weren't blaming Sacramento for the CalPERS because it's a whole separate organization. And on the tax, we don't have a direction other than each department is cutting the 7%. We're letting those who are experts in their areas make the decisions on where to make the cuts. We don't give direction on how to do it. We just have each of the professionals in their departments choose what's best for their organization. And we weren't talking about a tax increase for the cuts. I don't know where that came from. Okay, Mr. Speak.
I'm here, sorry. I guess I miscounted the number of folks. West Speak, 2623 Toomey Lane. Tonight I'm here representing the Corona Historic Preservation Society. And well, before I do that, I'd like to say what a beautiful job the council chambers, what they did. It looks great. I didn't see all the huge screens, and it looks great. Sounds great. Can't wait to watch it later and see how it looks. But I'm here representing the Corona Historic Preservation Society. On Saturday, we are hosting a panel of fire folks from the 60s and 70s to talk about the transformation from being in a volunteer force to being the professional force that we have now. It's going to be at the Civic Center, the Historic Civic Center in the community room. Starts at, I have to be there at 8, but it starts at 10. Though it's free to the public, don't have to be a member of the society. You're all welcome, and I hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Thank you. Devin Milligan and Linda Holdaway.
Hello, Council. You guys were saying we pay fair and comparable wages to surrounding cities. That's just simply not true. My small water resources team was 6 people as recently as September, October. Currently, 3 people work in my division at the water department. I'm the only field customer service rep right now. You know how many water meters we have in town? Over 40,000. I cannot keep up with the calls that are coming in. And the fact that you said we pay comparable wages, not true. 2 of those people left for rival water agencies with equal or better pay, and both have equal or better, or actually both have better benefit packages. We just are not comparable to surrounding water agencies. The 3rd member who left my team went to the private industry to make more than $10 more an hour with the same benefit package. Once again, not comparable. Same commute. Now that I'm the only rep, I'm falling behind, and all this means is diminished service to the people of Corona. We need to get our act together and pay fair wages and fair benefits to the employees, because more and more are leaving. DWP has had, I think, 17 employees leave in the last 6 months. The vast majority have not been filled. We're already running skeleton crews as it is. Thank you.
I can't find the button to tell her I want to speak yet, so I apologize to you.
I'm all ears, man.
The gentleman who left for the private industry, you said he left for better benefits.
Yeah, he gets slightly better health care.
No, that's not what you said. You said better benefits. Did he get a better pension?
Well, he was already vested in Social Security. He
No.
had recently
We're not
come-
talking, sir. Did he get a better pension than what he has here at the city?
I can't speak on that, but
I
I
thought
can
you
say his
said that he-
benefits are better. He has a company vehicle, gas paid for.
No.
They pay for his commute.
Did he get a better pension than what he got here at the city?
You're talking about retirement.
Yes, sir.
I can't speak for what his retirement is, but I'm sure it's comparable. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left.
So you're not sure?
Can I be more clear?
Yes. Can you be more clear?
Overall, if he's making over $10 more an
No.
hour.
No. You said benefits.
Okay. But if you make more, you can contribute more to your deferred comp, which he's going to be doing, which would be a benefit.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome.
Can I jump in for just 1 second? Sure. You know, he brings up a great point in terms of losing people. Each and every time that we experience a loss, we are doing comparable studies. The DWP team has taken some losses, but several of the people that have left specifically from his group, one went to Santa Monica, it was an exceptionally large agency. 3 layers of sales tax, a lot of assessed value, 2 million people in 10 square miles. It's a lot of stuff. But we are running comparables, and we're keeping a file on that, Carrie's team and Eddie's team, because at some point we need to keep reconciling it. But the story isn't exactly as he would present. And although Department of Water and Power isn't part of the general fund, so a lot of the numbers that Carrie showed you tonight don't necessarily apply to them. But the concept of no upward ceiling on the amount of money they can make just doesn't make sense. As the manager of this city and services for this community, I can't just simply continue to raise water rates and sewer rates and power rates to continue to pay for benefits that we can't afford. Quite frankly, I think every employee in here is worth the best benefit package possible because we really have a great team of people. It simply gets down to ability to pay, being comparable and fair in the market. We're doing the best we can to be comparable and fair, but at the same time, we have to be able to pay it, and we've gotten to a point where we can no longer afford to pay it. We're trying to keep the doors open. We're trying to keep providing high level of service to the community. We're deploying technology and transparency at darn near alarming rates. The IT team's working, 20 hours a day, so we're trying to include people in this conversation. But there is always that ability to pay. And I can't believe not for even 1 minute that someone leaving to the private side will have a defined benefit pension. So what's going to happen is there will be up times in the market that we're experiencing now, which is the baby we're back dialogue. And then there will be down times in the market. So their deferred comp accounts and 401ks will go up and down, which is vastly different than the PERS pension program. So when people are making life decisions about $10 an hour more and some level of deferred comp, or $10 less in a defined benefit program that pays you, pick the number, 60, 70, 80% of your highest year's salary for the rest of your life and your spouse's life. That's a significant difference. So to that end, we will continue, I guarantee you, we'll continue to meet and talk with every single employee we can, understand why they're leaving, show them the real math of the value of a pension program, show them the value of 2.7, show them the value of wherever they fit in the marketplace and similarly situated jobs in the other place, but we're still competitive. And we will try to do that as long as we can.
Thank you. I have one card left. Linda, hold away.
My first time here. This room is
Welcome.
beautiful. Thank you very much. Linda Holdaway, 1149 Acacia Street. Karen, you and I spoke one time the day of SB1 on the phone for about an hour. We discussed all of that and talked about my neighborhood and everything. And I do have a question. Kind of nervous here. First of all, it is 65 degrees in here. Next time I'm bringing my pitchfork and a blanket. I wanted to ask, and my husband and I have got a small business in Orange County, about 30 years, a little bit more than that. And it's a very tight ship. We have a couple employees, one of which is my daughter. They haven't gotten a lot of raises over the years because as things go with the growth, it's retail. So we make up in kind, it's a family business. But when it comes time for us to give raises, or they may or may not get that, as I say. But when my husband and my brother-in-law, who run the business, things are short. Say, for instance, I know I'm yammering on here. I'm watching the 2:05 seconds here. When it comes down to where it's slow, and then they don't pay themselves. They don't pay themselves. They pay them. My daughter, the sister-in-law, and the brother-in-law pay themselves less, and they take the hit, as you're talking about with everybody, with the city and whoever, all the employees. Have you guys, meaning all of you up here, done the same? The people up top, have you taken a pay cut? Have you not given yourselves raises? I'm not familiar with this. This is my second meeting here, second frozen meeting. And I wanted to know if you've all been willing to do that. You're saying we, Mr. Talbert, you're saying we are working, I understand you guys are all working hard, but have you all been willing to do that? The President of the United States is doing that right now. He's not paying himself. Of course, he's gainfully employed and all that, and a millionaire. But are you willing to do the same thing too? Everybody's pitching in, so has that been done by all of you? So that was my basic question on that. Okay? Thank you very much.
If I might, Linda asks an outstanding question, and the entire group in the front row, the managers, lead by example. Every single director took the exact same cuts as the general employees, the management and confidential employees, the city attorney's office, the city manager's office. So not only did we take the same cuts, exactly the same cuts, we took a little bit more. Everybody's car allowances were reduced, and I did that as well, and I did not take the 2% raise that everybody else took. So to that end, we're trying to lead by example. Like you said, I, for a number of years, was a business owner, and there were times that the employees got paid and I didn't, so I know what that's like, and we're going to continue, and the council has done the same thing, but that's a great question.
So I can come back? Do I start at 3 minutes again?
No.
Okay. So can the city cars go away? Do people get, when it comes down to the fast track, do you have the fast track allowance at something like $20 a shot sometimes? Those kind of things? So we pay for as citizens, we pay for your gas, we pay for your cars.
So let's
You all drive your personal cars?
Let's be very clear. We don't get paid for gas.
Okay,
We don't get paid for fast track.
okay.
We don't
good.
use cell phones that belong to the city. I mean, I
Okay.
can go down the list of things that we don't have.
And the vehicles are their personal vehicles, not paid for by the city.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad to hear that.
So-
Because there are a lot of cities that are able to do that, which have more money than we do. But that was just a general question. I did not know this. I have been watching the videos and all that also, but I'm speaking with a lot of people here and lately in the city, and they've all are happily, blissfully clueless, as a lot of people have been. I recently just started all this, and it's been It's just been an eye-opening experience. All these things we thought our city was doing so well. You know, you got a problem with your gas water, you call somebody, they come out and they fix it. Woo-hoo, I'm done. But when you find out all the inner workings, and it is a job, but also too, the city employees that are taking the hit, all you guys are working hard, and all those other people that are out there have taken the hit. It's just, there's questions out there about all of you too. So, and since you're the ones that are looking at us day in and day out, we're going to ask you directly.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you.
Ma'am, before you leave.
I was gonna explain.
Yes.
I was waiting for her. Are you gonna talk to her?
Yeah.
Okay, we're not to have questions. I was answering questions.
I know.
Not a conversation.
I'm not, no, it's
Okay.
an offer.
Okay.
Two things.
Yes.
Do you know what we get paid on the
No, I
city
don't.
council? Well, I'll tell you what.
I've seen different things posted, and, but I personally do not know what you make, and all that.
Okay.
I just asked, like I said, I'm new to this.
We were
but
all new. That's not a
Pardon?
problem. Give me a call. We'll get together for coffee upstairs.
Okay,
Okay? I'll answer every question you have,
very good.
including how much we get paid to be on city council.
Okay, very good. Thank you, sir.
$800 a month. Give me a call.
Okay, thank you.
Were there any more speaker cards? No, okay. Okay, with that, we will move on to item 3. We have 2 sets of meeting minutes. The approval from the meeting of January 17th, of the regular city council meeting, and a approval of the city council meeting of a special meeting on January 29th.
Move approval?
Second.
Oh, we kind of jumped. New system. I don't,
I have it. It's not showing on hers.
I've had a problem all night. Eugene? No.
Agenda.
I think you broke it. Oh, you're on the agenda.
It's coming.
There.
Oh, signed her out.
Okay, so that passes unanimously. Now, we have the consent items, which is considered to be routine matters, status reports, and documents covering previous city council action. The items listed on the consent calendar may be enacted in one motion. With the concurrence of city council, a council member or any person in attendance may request that an item be removed for further consideration. Is there any items to be removed?
No, I move approval as presented.
Second.
Well, that went very fast. That passes unanimously. Item 7, public hearings, we have none. Item 8, legislative matters, we have none. Item 9, reports from city commissions, committees, and boards, we have none. Item 10, city council written committee reports, we have none. Item 11, city council member reports from regional board meetings. I do have we are running late. I will go over basics. We did have a 2-day workshop with RCTC, Riverside County Transportation Commission. And of that meeting, there were several different topics, different presentations. One was talking about social media and RCTC, how we utilize it, focus groups that we talk with, trying to get some ideas on how we can best utilize getting out information as well as getting information back. The specialists talk about 50% of Americans now receive a lot of their information on Facebook as their primary news source. Other social media platforms we talked about, but quite often the structures of the platforms are misunderstood, so it tends to be one that's not utilized as much. Facebook is the most readily one. Then we had a state legislative update. Talked about the transportation revenue that we spend on transportation and maintain level of state funding, which has been very low. And then we went into talk about the preserving and increasing funding and some of the difficulty and challenges, ensuring that Measure A in project delivery, which we have a whole brochure if anybody's interested. Measure A was the sales tax measure that we as voters voted in 1989 and again in 2009, and raising close to $1 billion during this, which has allowed over time to pay for some of the transportation and commuter rail transit and some of the other items covered under Measure A. And we're talking also about improved state and federal highway O&M and how that we have great needs within the whole state. Programs and policies to the advantage of Riverside County within the whole state. Programs and policies to the advantage of Riverside County, as well as repaying some of the general fund loans, stabilize and restore the STIP. So it's going in some details on some of the funding and some of the legislative process. We did have discussion on SB 1. We talked about some of the projects that will be funded through SB 1, as well as the local streets and roads. Corona alone gets a significant benefit from the SB 1, but it was also talked about and addressed the fact that there is a possible repeal. With that, with the 5 projects in Western Riverside County, those will not be affected with the repeal. So those 5 projects will continue on, which we've discussed in previous meetings. Then we had a complete discussion and presentation on the tolling in California as a whole. There's many more projects coming on board, not just in Riverside County, but we also have Orange County has 2 tolling projects coming on. San Bernardino County has 2, the extension of the 15 as well as on the 10. So tolling is throughout Southern California. It's already existing up in Northern California and in San Diego. So we were just discussing how tolling has become almost as prominent as it is on the East Coast. We also discussed Caltrans District 8, the SHOP overview, which is the funding through Caltrans. That the largest of the 12 Caltrans district is here in the Inland Empire. We are District 8, which is Riverside and San Bernardino counties. We have 49 incorporated cities, over 28,000 square miles, 32 state routes, 72,000 lane miles, and 1,400 employees with Caltrans just within our district. And then we duplicated some of the conversations on maintenance programs, SB1, and all the different fundings that are necessary that still are lacking, and the good estate repair. So we have some big issues in transportation, as not just here with our budget, but also with transportation and trying to address the needs within the county. We also had a lengthy discussion. I'd like to get into it sometime, but right now we're running out of time here. Where we are now and where we want to be, going through the different projects that we have accomplished over the years, and setting up for the next discussion on looking ahead on what we're anticipating for 2018 and some of the projects from the various items from the Measure A. We did have a discussion on how we develop the priorities on the projects. And from there, we're going to relook at some of the projects that have been brought to the table, that have been on our lists in prior years. Some of those projects have changed, and perfect example when we discussed the Mid-County Parkway. The original Mid-County Parkway was to go all the way to Cajalco. I fought that with tooth and nail. I mean, all the way to 15 at Cajalco. Tooth and nail to break that up, because until we worked very diligently on getting some of the congestion in our western side of Riverside County, we cannot have the cars going from all the way in the county dumping at the 15 at Cajalco. And that was the original project. And so that's one of the things that I had fought very strongly. We did break that project. In the second portion, which is from the 215 to the 15, is still on the plan, but it's not something we're looking at. We dropped that to the bottom because it's something that is less value at this time, particularly with funding and the congestion still increasing on the western side. So we talked about how projects garner their support within the county and how we work with the different commissioners in different cities. So very long, 2 days, but in short, that's the topics that we covered. I'd be more than happy to go over any details if anybody has questions. Next item is administrative reports. We have none. Oh, Mr. Talbert, yes. I'm sorry, yes. City attorney? Okay, now city manager. Still none, okay. Well, you leaned up on the administrative, so I thought you had something to say.
I need to say, but I'll pass.
You'll pass, okay. City council member reports, we have Mr. Haley.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Quite a meeting, huh? Jeepers, I wish everybody stayed. There was a lady who made some remarks earlier this evening, and she said she'd been up since 2:30, and I'm sure she was awfully tired. That's why she made some of the remarks she did, but I have to address them because I think she made them. She needs to be addressed. She said, which one of you up there has ever been shot at? Well, quite frankly, I have. And I have two of my associates in the front row, at least two, maybe more. One was in the Army, the other was in the Marines, and they have been prepared to be shot at. I don't know if they ever actually have, but they have been prepared to be shot at, and my hat is off to you. It's tough to be a policeman. It's tough to be a fireman. It's tough to do some of the jobs we have here in the city, but I'm not going to get insulted by who of you would ever get shot at? Well, I have. She also mentioned, well, I had to take a picture of a dead baby. Well, you know what? I had to carry dead babies and dead kids when I was in Vietnam in my medevac helicopter. So please don't insult us. That's not right. But now the really good stuff. We had some horrible situations happen over this weekend at a couple of parks. One of the parks had serious graffiti in them, and I was notified about that. And another park had some serious hygiene problems, shall we say. How's that, David? Pretty good? Serious hygiene problems? The person used the restroom for everything but. Oh, no, they did use it as a restroom, but they apparently missed the toilet. And it was horrible. It was absolutely disgusting. Well, I contacted Mr. Tom Moody, who's in charge of the Maintenance Services Department, and the one with the graffiti, that took a long time to get fixed. It took about 8 hours to get that thing fixed. From the time I called him till the time it was done, it took him 8 hours, he and his crew, to get out there and get that thing fixed. The other one, the disgusting one, the absolutely horrible, 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 deplorable toilet issue was done in 4 hours. From the time I sent him an email, he sent back an email, said, I got it, I'm on it. And less than 4 hours later, he and his crew went out there and took good care of the city. And the reason I mention that is because these were parks where kids are, and they don't need to be around that stuff. And the general employees here in this city, some of them work for maintenance services, did a great job. And I think that they need to be patted on the back in public. And Tom, I want you to tell your troops that they just did a phenomenal job. I mean, it was great. And thank you for not only keeping the place clean, but also keeping it so that other people didn't come down with some kind of a horrible, horrible disease because of the actions of people who are not probably here in this room. So thank you. And to the general employees and the people who work here, thank you. This is a tough meeting tonight. It's the toughest meeting I've been on since I've been an elected official. And but some things were said here tonight that had to be said, and I appreciate everything that was said by members of the staff and members of the public. And I sincerely think that we can all work together to make this place a really, really great city again. It's a good city. It's a very good city, and it can be even better. Thank you.
No additional comments tonight.
No additional comments, Mr. Scott? Okay. Mr. Montanez?
Thank you. I just wanted to thank the two chiefs, but also to thank the firefighters and police officers for this weekend. I know it was an extremely hard weekend, and I want to thank you for doing what you guys do, and just thank you.
Okay. And to second what Mr. Montanez said, when I signed up for TIP back in 1996, that's the first thing I said is I don't want to deal with calls for children. And those are one of the most difficult calls, and I know that each of your teams had to deal with that. It is a challenging, and I just want to thank you and extend our appreciation for what they went through. We have a lot of upcoming events. I do want to clarify, I should have done my comments on the RCTC, is there are 2 open houses for the I-15 project. One is tomorrow night at Nellie Weaver Hall in Norco. So you're welcome to attend that from 5:30 to 7:30. Any questions on the I-15 project? They'll talk about it. Please, this is the time to get the information. The other one is at the end of the month, February 28th, and that will be 5:30 to 7:30, and that's at Eagle Glen. So take your pick. Please come out and ask questions. We also have this weekend, it's got lots of events, but one I want to highlight is the American Legion Law and Order Awards Dinner at the American Legion Post 742. They should like to have community come out and support not only American Legion, but the Law and Order awards that they're giving out. And then, is it the second, Chief, the second Tuesday is the Run with the Cop? The second Tuesday of every month from 5:30 to 6:30, we have Run with the Cop, which is a program started last year? 2 years ago. And that's this, they've moved it onto the South Lawn, so anybody can come out. We work with the 100 Mile Club, or they work, they work with the 100 Mile Club so the children can get their miles with the 100 Mile Club. Anybody can come out. It's kind of a fun day when our officers run with those that are there. And then we have on Saturday night, the Corona Library does a spotlight on the Corona Annual Youth Talent Show. And that's from 2 to 4, and that's at the Corona Public Library. Did you have any more information on that? No. And then on Thursday night, on February 22nd, is the Ladders and Linguini. That is what the Fire Association works with the Library Foundation, and there's still some tickets available. And that's from 6 to 8:30 p.m., so not a whole lot of tickets left. So if you're interested in going and supporting the library and having fun for an evening, please you can go online to the Corona Library Foundation. Friends, the Corona Friends, they combined, right, the Corona Friends. And then on Saturday the 24th, Circle City Rotary Club is having their annual signature event, the Fire and Ice Chili Cook-Off and Craft Beer Festival, and that'll be down at Dos Lagos. I think I want to go that for tonight. And with that, we will adjourn this meeting. We do have a study session on next, is it Tuesday, Wednesday? Tuesday. Wednesday? Okay, it is next Tuesday at 3:30 in this room, and that's going to be the topic of talking about the new laws that took place January 1st and how Corona is going to work within that on the issue of marijuana. So if anybody's interested, that is next Tuesday. And then our other study session will be on the 28th at 3:30 also in this room. That's the regular study session, but we needed to get 2 in this month. And that topic on the 28th will be discussing the McKinley grade separation. With that, we will adjourn this meeting until February 21st, no earlier than 4:30 p.m. for closed session. This meeting will begin at 6:30 in this room. We are adjourned.